Live now.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the ISM SICS Debate Season 2, the great debate. It's not just the country, but the whole planet wants to know. So we have a very interesting set of debate topics today. It can be quite controversial, but definitely of more of informational and educational purposes. So with this, I'd like to call upon our founder chairman, none other than Dr. Amulya Sahu sir, who has always been a constant support for any of the innovative activities to be done under ISM SICS. I request Dr. Sahu sir to please open this meeting. So kindly unmute yourself, sir. Yes, sir. Please go ahead.
All, it is really a illustrious panel, and we have chosen the topic which is contemporary and has got relevance to our day-to-day life today. So we have selected people who have expertise in the matter and who have authority to give opinion on those subjects. So let us hope we will enjoy together. ISMSICS, as you know, is a talent-driven platform. So I will just give you a glimpse of people who have now risen in this platform. First is Jagannath Boramani. When I was president in BOA, I was looking for a talent who will be a good human being, at the same time a talented person. I couldn't find anybody but only one, Jagannath Boramani. Now he is the chairman of ISMSICA. He has the integrity, he has the intelligence, he has the absolutely a wonderful human being and very balanced, and I'm very hopeful he will take this organization forward. That our present secretary, I knew him only, I saw him only once, and that too in a standing position in a Desai hospital. When I listened to him, I thought he's the man, and he has not proven me wrong. Now, another person, I have never met him also. Now he's going to moderate it, Jagdish Reddy. I have never met him, but what a talent and what a gifted person. He's so low profile, but he's high in performance, and the integrity is beyond question. So I'm so fortunate that people are joining who on their own merit, and this is the platform from them. I welcome you all. I'll request Dr. Boramani to give a brief introduction to our organization. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Can I share my slide?
Thank you, Sahu sir. I would next like to call upon our executive chairman of ISM SICS Society, the man who started the first topical SICS in India, none other than Dr. Jagannath Boramani, sir. Please go ahead, sir.
Yeah. Can you see my slides?
Yes, sir.
And you can hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. This organization, the International Society of Manual Small Incision Cataract Surgeon, was founded by our chairman, founder chairman, Dr. Amulya Sahu, way back in 2005 in Mumbai. This was mainly to promote SICS globally and not to push SICS in some corner of some conference. So with that intention, to promote this beautiful art, he started the organization. After the first meeting in Mumbai in 2005, we had multiple international events. The first one was in China in the same year, followed by the one in Malaysia. Then we had an international 3 days conference in Indonesia the next year. We had a conference in Egypt, Sweden, Philippines, and then we had a live surgical workshop as well as surgical camp in South Africa. We went to Kuala Lumpur APACRS to conduct a wet lab in 2015, and from 2015 onwards we started our world conferences. Every 2 years we are holding a world conference. The first one was held in Pune in 2015. The second was held jointly with Arvind Eye Care Systems in Chennai in 2017. In the same conferences, ISMSIS became a global partner of Help Me See, who are into promotion of SICS simulator. Then we had wet lab in WOC 2018 in Barcelona. This was in Barricara Institute. This was kept as a satellite program. We had multiple CMEs across India, and also ISMSS was a part of various conferences. They were given the symposia. And last year in Kolkata, we had the third biennial world conference. It was a big conference organized by Dr. Debashish Bhattacharya. In the same conference, the next conferences were announced. The fourth one is now in Chandigarh in this year itself, in September 2021. Dr. Jagatram will be hosting this conference. 2023, the fifth conference was supposed to be in US, but now it will become a sixth conference in US. And the fifth will be jointly with LV Prasad Eye Institute. We have a presence all over the state. Various state chapters have been formed, and we have chapters in almost more than 20 countries across the globe. During the pandemic, we conducted almost more than 20 webinars, and the attendance generally for all the webinars is a massive one. Those who want to become members of ISM SICS can take a screenshot. This is our website, ismsics.com. And very recently now we are announcing a global SICS training program. This is a web-based training program. The in charge of the programs are Dr. Usha Zohari and Dr. Aishwarya. You can take a screenshot. If you want to be a teacher or a mentor in this program, you can just scan this QR code given on the screen, or you can go through the link, or you can contact the numbers. You can take the screenshot and you can be a mentor in this program. So with this brief introduction of ISM SICS, I stop my talk. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. We also have our Chief National Coordinator of ISM SICS, Dr. Satanshu Mathur. Satanshu, sir, are you there?
Yes, Srinivas,
I
thank you
request
very
him
much.
to please say a few words before we start with the first debate.
Welcome all of the dignitaries from India and abroad. And really, I appreciate the efforts of Dr. Srinivas Joshi in organizing this webinar. This is the planet want to know with the guidance of Dr. Sau and Dr. Boramani sir. I hope all will be benefited by this webinar and meeting. Thank you, Srinivas, for your efforts. We really appreciate your efforts. You are a dynamic person. Dr. Sau sir already described your performance. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for those kind words. Our President, Dr. Debashish Bhattacharya, and Vice Chairman, Dr. Parikshit Gogate, will be joining very soon. And we also have a very interesting panel today. Dr. Pamela from Mexico. She's waving here. We also have Professor Dr. Deepak Mishra from Uttar Pradesh. We have Dr. Chinmay Sahu here from Mumbai. And Dr. Krishna Prasad Kudlu will be joining us soon. And we also have a leader in making, Dr. Satyajit Sinha. I welcome all the panelists here and our international speakers. Dr. Boris Malugin, Dr. Steve Arshinov is already here. Welcome, Dr. Steve. Dr. David Chang will be joining us soon. And welcome, Dr. Nito, the spin man, the googly man. We'll be very happy to see his Faco spins very soon. I welcome once again everyone, and definitely my co-moderator, none other than Dr. Jagdish Reddy Bandi. So thank you, Jagdish, for helping me in co-moderating this session. So all time is set. We have 5 minutes for each debate. And if any speaker wants to make a comment later on, ideally we have kept no rebuttal because of the shortage of the time. So if anyone wants to make a comment, then definitely you can just raise your hands, and request you to please quickly do your rebuttal in 30 seconds. We intend to finish because we have 6 important topics to be discussed today, and along with the 4 international speakers. So without wasting much time, we'll move on to our first debate by 2 towering personalities, who is none other than Dr. Santosh Honavar and Dr. Rohit Shetty. The innovator, the agile, ever young leader, a sensation amongst the young ophthalmologists and the postgraduates, an exceptional and extraordinary and exquisite personality, none other than Dr. Santosh Honavar. I request Honavar sir to please start his first debate on the web-based conferences are definitely the way to go, whether there is corona or no corona. Here you go, sir. Your 5 minutes starts now.
If he has done a lot of things, then it's fine.
Thank you, Srinivas, and I thank the Society for the opportunity. I'll be speaking on web-based conferences. Is it the new normal? 2020 began with COVID and with an onslaught of webinars, so to say.
I'm in a webinar. Can you
Yeah, with a lot of
webinar?
side effects at the end of the year. We have what is called Zoom gloom, and we also have a sore thumb and possibly sore throat as well. Do we want to continue it? Well, it is futile debating against Rohit. He's going to beat me down, I'm sure, with all his wisdom about face-to-face conferences. But I would like to just say that humans have evolved. We have seen evolution of television, computers, telephones into mobile phones and smartwatches now. Ophthalmology instruments have evolved tremendously from macro instruments to very fine micro instruments. This is how surgical teaching was done then, and this is how surgical teaching is done now. So there has been evolution in every aspect. So isn't it time for a physical meeting also to evolve from its current state to something refined? Physical meetings, of course, are very good, and that's how we have learned medicine and ophthalmology and continue to learn. But there are some downsides to physical meeting. One is that it is expensive. There is cumulative time. If there are 10,000 delegates, each spending about 50 of their working hours attending a 4 or 5 day meeting, including travel, then the amount of cumulative time that they collectively spend on a conference is to be imagined. There is wasted resources, and of course, there is this large carbon footprint. Giving this example of AIO's Gurugram in 2020, which was of course very entertaining and good. This was a scene at the food court. This was a trade hall. And of course, in conference halls, you don't find many people unless you're very keen to learn. And cumulative time spent by the delegates was 400,000 work hours, counting 8 work hours per day, with a CTC of about 40 crore. And what did AIO spend on this meeting? About 16 to 18 crore budget. And you can't believe this, AIO spent approximately 50,000 rupees per member delegate on this conference. So are we justified in spending so much money? And whose money is it anyway? It belongs to all of us, because obviously the companies which sponsor these meetings are going to make this money back from either the ophthalmologist or from the consumer. So it belongs to all of us. It's not anybody's particular money. Now, what about the carbon footprint? This is one prime example. This climate change conference that was attended by 195 countries agreed to cut greenhouse gas emissions. But the organization of this conference emitted 300,000 tons of carbon dioxide. In a medical conference, it is estimated that for a 4-day conference, the amount of carbon that is emitted is equal to an entire city in a week. That is 3 tons per person, and in a typical AIS conference would generate about 30,000 tons of carbon. So the world is worried, and there are proposals to have a nearly carbon neutral conference model. Now, virtual conferences are of many types. These are the 4 main types: webinar, as we are having now, webcast, video conferences, and when a major meeting is held, it's only on a virtual meeting platform, which has associated trade fair and several conference halls happening together. What are the advantages? It definitely eliminates travel. Organizational speed is increased. It's more value at a fraction of a cost. Chat rooms and virtual common interest rooms enable networking, and there is level playing field. It democratizes education, because those who cannot afford to travel and pay a very high delegate fee can actually attend webinars and web-based conferences. It provides anytime access, environment friendly. Of course, you can do away with exposure to COVID. Can we completely eliminate face-to-face meetings? Possibly not. So either we reduce the frequency or cut down the lavishness, or do both. Use built-up convention centers with low carbon footprint rather than building convention centers or exhibit halls, etc., which of course cannot, most of the material that is used cannot be recycled. Go biannual instead of annual meetings, or go partly or fully virtual. There are many scientific studies that have been done to assess the advantage of virtual meetings over face-to-face meetings. And this is one such study published in Nature, which shows that if you go fully virtual, you eliminate carbon footprint almost 100%, 99.9%. But if you have various other model like having larger meeting venues, which are fixed meeting venues, and have a deferred meeting, not annual but biannual, then you eliminate most of the carbon emission. So in summary, I would say that minimize physical meetings, restrict them to targeted face-to-face optimal learning events, which are very crucial in learning, of course, such as surgical demonstration training class, of course, have to be on face-to-face kind of a session. Create ideal modules for virtual teaching, which are not optimized at this point in time. We understand there has been a webinar fatigue. That's mainly because we haven't learned to optimize webinars and fine-tune these to the needs of the learners. And of course, we have to adapt to the new normal or perish. I would end with this very famous quotation. It's not the strongest of the species that survive, nor the most intelligent, but the ones who are most responsive to change. And I believe it's time for us to change, not completely from face-to-face meetings, but have possibly a mixed blend of a few selected face-to-face meetings and switch over to virtual learning. Thank you so much.
Sir, the whole audience was mute. So much of carbon footprint, so much of money being, no one had actually calculated it about. So let's hear from the scientist supreme in ophthalmology and our inspiring personality, the real charmer, who's none other than Dr. Rohit Shetty, sir. What he has to say about let's meet and learn is what he wants to put his point on. Over to Dr. Rohit, sir, please.
I would. Can you hear me, Srinivas?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Thank you,
Yes,
Srinivas. Thank you, Dr. Sahu, sir, and all the members, the president, the secretary, and vice president of ISM SICS Society. My topic today is Planet wants to know about the virtual versus physical conferences. And Sir mentioned, Dr. Sonawar, sir mentioned about all his needs about from the global warming to the amount of money we are spending and the advantages of going virtual. But I would like to share some photographs with him. I've taken it from his own post, which I follow very diligently. And looking at all these things, still do you think when you have this kind of conversation with friends and colleagues, don't you think you forget about your carbon prints, you forget about all the money we spend, all the beautiful memories we have, and your joy of meeting your own fellows, joy of meeting your own colleagues, joy of traveling around the world. I think that is where I think we are kind of having this kind of dilemma about going out. We realize how important it is to meet people when we all stayed back at home. And, in your own words, you miss all this in your own Facebook. That means that all of us echo the same words, echo the same sentiments, what you shared in your Facebook, a joy of meeting everybody. So when we started off with this virtual meeting, we were worried about this training the invisible student. The question is, who is the student here? It looked nice initially. We had lots of people logging in. But later we realized it's completely different feel when you don't know your invisible student. And that invisibility is one thing which always makes you feel worried about this Zoom-based or web-based platforms. In 2020, actually, when this whole webinar was, I set up this whole room, and it was excitement. There was so much of excitement about having your own Zoom room where you could use it in your office at home. You don't need to dress up, and this is what I use now. There are things lying on there. It's used like a place, and you don't feel the same feel what you had in the beginning. So the question always comes: what's normal for the spider is difficult. It's a different to a fly. It's a completely different. So what is real normal is something which we need to really be focused upon. What I focus upon now is all about socialization. We are not born to be indoors. We are not born to be, especially a lot of people in this group. And why do we go to conference? It's not just about food, not just about listening to it. It's just the camaraderie. It's just the feel of an atmosphere there's absolutely no way you can deny that you cannot do a hands-on kind of a training on your Zoom. So it has to be. I've been seeing the present batch of fellows, the skills are pathetic because they've never operated for the last 1 year. They've attended 2,000 Zoom meetings, but absolutely zero on skills. And that is what is very important for us. And these are very important factors, the social distancing is really getting on our mental status. It's just not the general population. There are thousands of articles now about how social distancing and keeping away is creating chaos in your mind. So I think that aspect, as a doctor and ophthalmologist, and all of us here, we're used to meeting people or traveling. We need to be very careful about too much of this Zoom-based meeting, and it will fizzle off. Eventually, it will fizzle off. What are the health benefits? I'm just going to concentrate only mental and physical health benefit of a conference. I know money is important. I know a global warming important. I know we are unnecessary travel is not the norm now. But all these factors, you cannot deny that young people who go to meeting look at senior guys and they learn the etiquette of behavior, how you present, and what are they learning from me and any one of us here just sitting and talking. And that is not the way. How you meet people. I mean, there are various factors. Is beyond. This is something very important. Your mind is active. You travel. You lose. I mean, there is a chance 1 in 2,000 do have a chance of Alzheimer's. If you travel a lot, you meet people. They say it reduces. This is demand study, and all this is you can debate on it, but it's still there. It's all in published literature. So this is what I would say is that I strongly believe that, of course, I agree with Santosh sir, that hybrid is the way to go, but there's no space for only web-based meeting in our, I think, in our profession. This is what I rest my case with this.
Uh,
I said you would win hands down anyway.
Srinivas, can I come in?
Yes, sir. Any rebuttal, Santosh sir? 30 seconds.
No rebuttal at all. I mean, I think we agree that both have their advantages and disadvantages. And the way to go would be have fewer conferences. Earlier, when it was non-COVID, I would travel all weekends and possibly attend at least 2 meetings every weekend. And that was very hectic, right? And there were so many conferences, each with 20, 30 people sitting in a hall. And then, those kind of meetings can be converted to virtual meetings, whereas real nice meetings, which are topic-based, such as the one NN conducts, those can obviously be physical meetings. They need to be physical meetings. And we can have one national meeting a year or a couple of meetings, major meetings a year. So there is a good scope, I think, for hybrid meetings and a combination of these two. That's what I would say.
Thank you, sir. Rohit sir, I think we'll go with the discussion and then you can add in any time. Debashish sir has also joined this webinar, and Sahu sir is also there. So I just want to ask one question to Debashish sir and Sahu sir. As Dr. Honavar sir said, there is increase in carbon footprint. There is spending of nearly around 50,000 rupees per person. It's whose money is that? It's our own money. It's the members' money. And spending 50,000, is it relevant? Versus, definitely Rohit sir made a very good point on reducing the risk of Alzheimer's. No one wants to have Alzheimer's when they grow old, isn't it? And definitely it increases the self-esteem. So how would you definitely try to vouch on this, Debashish sir, first?
Yes, Srinivas, points well taken, but this 50,000 thing is probably some of the affluence in the conference that we indulge in. We can streamline, but I would personally like to meet Rohit, Santosh. I am really craving for it, I must say, because as Rohit pointed out, I mean, unless we meet physically, unless we see each other's face and in 3 dimension and the entire gesture, posture, everything, we don't really get the feel of whether it is learning, whether it is interacting, whether it is communicating, personal interactions. All this combines, makes a lot of sense. And I think everybody must be in agreement. Of course, like Santosh said, that small group meetings, like we have our we didn't have the Zoom platform, but now between our branches, we sit and we talk and all this. These are the good side effects of this pandemic. So, yes.
Thank you, Debas. Sau sir, your quick comments, please.
Yep. See, we are forgetting one thing. We are not robots, and to approach a human being as a mechanical unit will be disastrous for the humanity itself, because we are focusing too much on the brain. We will totally go haywire, as Rohit told. So we have to have emotion also there. So when we are meeting, the money part should not become so important, as a camaraderie meeting is a emotional quotient is there. When you meet, we embrace, we feel the warmth, and it is cannot be calibrated with money. Money is for what? That should be answered. Money is not for stashing in the bank. It should be spent. And we have the mela concept. We have this all big melas. It is only for this reason that we get integrated more and more and become a complete human being. So somewhere we have to streamline it. It is a now challenge, but we have never have to forget that we are human beings, and we cannot, we should not compete with the robots. That's all.
Thank you, sir. Dr. Nito and Dr. Pamela, 10 seconds each. Dr. Nito, what do you think? How is the situation in Brazil? Corona, no corona, whether in corona, do you still want to physically meet with the vaccination? How you want to go about it?
Yes, we are having trouble here because of the vaccines are late in arriving. Yesterday came a big lot from India, and thank you very much for that. But I think it will be a long time here until we have a normal situation. And many meetings are scheduled, but I think most will go online only, and only as every lots of you said, small meetings will be held, but big meetings, I think, would be a long time here for to happen.
Quick comments from Dr. Pamela. From what are your views from Mexico?
Yes, well, we are also getting the vaccine, but in a very slow rate, and not everybody's getting vaccinated. At least for this year, for 2021, all the meetings are scheduled for online meetings. But my personal opinion is I do miss face-to-face meetings. I think we do have to reduce the number, as Dr. Santos said, because there are a lot of saving that can be done that way. But I think we cannot forget about them, because as Dr. Sahu said, the warmth on the social part of a person, it's really important.
Thank you. Quick comments from Dr. Steve. What's your impression from Canada?
Well, it's similar. I think that everything is delayed probably until the summer or September because of the rollout of the vaccine being slower than we'd hoped, and we'd use online. But I think in the end, nothing is better than going to a meeting, hearing someone present something, and then talking to them in person about the fine points of what they're doing and trying to teach. And I think we really learn from actually talking to people in person about the fine details of what we want to do, more than a public lecture. And when you give a lecture online to 1,000 people or something, you don't say the same thing as when you sit down with someone over a cup of coffee or lunch and talk to them about the fine points of what you do. So I think we'll need both. We'll have large public demonstrations and lectures, but I think you really learn details from sitting and talking to people and getting to know them, and finding out honestly what the fine points of doing something and how to do it.
Thank you very much, Dr. Steve. I think all of us agree that the hybrid probably is the way to go now. And definitely we all are waiting for the physical conferences as well. But those who can't attend, I think definitely the link has to be shared, and anybody wants to learn sitting at home, I think the webinars or the live conferences are also definitely the way to go. I think I would like to give a standing ovation to the two exceptional speakers who have done extremely well on the topics given to them. Thank you very much, sir. The only thing is it's virtual, so even if we stand, we cannot make it out. But definitely, it's the way to go. Thank you very much, Hondavar sir. Thank you, Rohit sir. You both did a fabulous job. Thank you very much. So we move on to the next debate, because as one of the author has said, raise your words, not your voice. It's the rain that grows the flowers and not the thunders. So coming to the next topic we have is the fine, fabulous, fascinating ophthalmologist, a young, dynamic, excellent and inspiring personality, Dr. Ameya Kulkarni. Dr. Ameya, can you switch on your video, please? Is Dr. Ameya here?
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah. Versus the lighthouse amidst the storm, the guiding light to us, to all of us, the ever chivalrous teacher, Dr. M.S. Ravindra sir. So first I would request Dr. Ameya to say that SICS has to be low priced because there is no costing, there is no CMC, no FACO machine, no that machine, this machine, versus Dr. M.S. Ravindra says, man is the machine. So it has to be priced high. Over to Dr. Ameya first. Your time starts now.
I'm trying to share my screen. Just bear with me.
Sure.
Can sir go first? I'm having some difficulties with sharing the screen.
M.S. Ravindra sir?
Sure, I'm ready.
Great.
Is my screen visible or no?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Am I visible? Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Fine.
Yes, sir.
Okay. There is some issue.
So you can just press the yeah.
Yes, I think my young friend wants to come after me. That's fine. This one slide is enough for me to conclude the slide and conclude my presentation and finish. Look at the beautiful hand which can grasp somebody else's hand so beautifully, and look at the most expensive hand that you have. Which do you think you would like to have, this one or that one? So that's the end of my presentation. Anyway, for the sake of argument, I would like to continue. This is the scenario we all have become slaves of. That's because we have forgotten how to handle a tiny, whiny, small.
Voice,
Am I audible?
your voice is muffled.
Voice is not audible?
No, it's okay, sir. It's
audible, but
Audible,
it's echoing.
audible.
Slight echo is it. Continue.
Fine. We have forgotten how to handle this because we have umpteen number of influences from all around us which are not concerned with us, and we become slaves of these machines. A price that consumer is happy to procure, a price that majority of clients, remember what India is made of, can afford, a price which is prevailing in the market for different categories of socioeconomic status. You should be able to make a profit based upon your skills, experience, scope for growth for the future, and cost of the risks you have. Legal risks are huge today, and you need to look at the breakages, losses, unforeseen elements that are there in the practice. And should we look at the benefit the claim derives? Yes, we should. Our lawyers, auditors, businessmen, politicians, everybody calculate how much you're benefited, and they say, give me a small percentage of that. Why are we not doing it? Claims to decide compensation based upon lifetime losses, the courts. So they will calculate this person is going to live for next 90 years. Let us calculate and squeeze something out of this doctor who has yelled, question mark yelled. And then whenever you're buying something, it is not just something that you're buying out of, nowhere. It is, look at this. You're buying years of frustration, moments of pure joy. You're not buying just one thing. You're buying a piece of heart and piece of soul from the physician that's operating on you. I had a very senior doctor, and in the beginning of my practice, I had an opportunity of going to him a couple of times. And he asked me, should not be a doctor deserve to be a rich? We're all trained to serve the poor, but we'll continue to do that. But how about others? He charged little more than others as a pediatrician, and he became extremely rich. And who are his worst enemies? They are his own colleagues. My most respected professor used to fly to AOS meet on an economy air ticket, sometimes in train, sometimes in buses, while trade employees who sold all those machines always flew on business class air, and the big bosses fly in chartered air flights. If at all anybody has to be rich, it has to be the doctor who has put in his entire life in the patient care. If you look at the cost of this beautiful art piece, it may be few hundred rupees. But then is that the price of this artwork? Look at this marvelous carvings we have everywhere around us. Are they not priceless? I mean, if you look at the value of stone, it may be 1,000 rupees, but what is the value of these idols? And Rolls-Royce and Bentley are most expensive cars, and they're handmade. This will cost you a bomb of money, but what's the cost of this? Does it come free? Ophthalmologists are valuable, very expensive infrastructure, and the so-called expensive and so-called cheap, the difference is only phaco machine. Often it comes as free as bundling. We have a couple of phaco machines. They all come to us free of cost. Should we include what has come to us free into the costing? Fluidics of the best machine cannot match what my fingers can offer. And in MSICS, no one size fits everybody. Look at what is the difference in the cost. The famous Arvind Hospital did cost analysis. Difference between phaco surgery and MICs is just 600 rupees. And results wise, there's no difference in the results of phaco and MICs. There are hundreds of such presentations all over. Look at this cost, phacoemulsification versus SICS. And the difference is because the phacoemulsification, they use a foldable IOL. It's not because of anything else. That's the difference. And why should the size has to be considered as a cheaper surgery? Results wise, look at the end of 6 months. This is from Sandu Krui, a very famous doctor. And the results
The last 30 seconds.
Soon after surgery had comparable UCVA, and SICS group had lesser amount of corneal edema. At 6 months, results are identical. Look at this. Can you buy this article? Yes, you can always buy it when it is made by machine at a cost which is a mere few hundred rupees or few less than $100. You can buy it, but can you touch the original handmade Mona Lisa? No. There are any number of conditions clinically which are better managed by SICs when compared to phacoemulsification. Immediate rehabilitation, no injection, no bandage, no redness. These are applicable to both the conditions. Learning curve is steep in phacoemulsification surgery. It is steep in SICs also, but most of the doctors put in only 20% efforts to learn SICs, while they put lifetime efforts to learn phacoemulsification. These complications are best managed by SICs. Should SICS cost same as phacoemulsification? I would humbly request it should cost more. Artwork versus machine work, as you have proved, SICS should cost more than a phacoemulsification, or at least as much if the market demands so. Can offer the best of IOL to suit the patient needs. I have no bundling. I am not committed to put one lens for everybody. I can choose what the patient needs, and representatives won't bother. They don't even come to me. And because I don't go for bundling, you can offer discounts and do any amount of charity because I have enough money to spare on poor people, because I don't throw away the money to the traders. Once I have offered way back in the beginning of my career, one of the lowest rates I offered to a villager who walked into my clinic. He walked out. His face was not very happy. I had offered the lowest price to him. He returned back 2 weeks later, operated by a colleague of mine elsewhere. He came back to me for the other eye. He said my rates were too less for him to get the confidence. He ran away from me. That's the day I decided I should not be lesser than the competitors. And my skills are highest because I practice MSICS. I don't underplay my skills, and I do not promote S5 brand machines or IOLs. I'll choose what is best for my patients. A lab surgeon doesn't explain what brands use. So is a cardiac surgeon. What is wrong with we ophthalmologists? We are great surgeons. Why do we take shelter under brands? Buy machines for the sake of you and not to make money from the market. Don't sell machines. Let my opponent, a very young doctor, I wish him all the best in his presentation. Let him be called as Dr. Maya and not as an end user. Thank you. That's a machine. That's your mother feeding you. Thank you.
Wonderful.
Thank you so much, MSR sir. I think you have put all the points, what all is possible of why you should be highly priced. Very nice and lucid presentation. Over to Dr. Ameya.
Yeah, I'm still trying to share my screen. If it's not possible, I'll just give my presentation as it is. Is that fine?
You want us to play your presentation?
Machine problem.
You can continue.
I did not do
without
it.
presentation. You can continue without presentation. Ravindra has already cleared. But
okay.
Machine dependency is not good.
You can just quickly share your presentation to me or Jagdish.
I'll just go ahead with my presentation. I don't have so many slides. And first of all, I would like to thank Dr. Srinivas. I
Switch on your video, Dr. Ameya.
Yeah.
Video is not possible, he's saying.
The video is possible. Okay, go ahead, Dr.
Ameya. You continue. Ameya, you continue.
I'll just continue.
We'll look forward to hearing you, Dr. Ameya.
Yeah. I am absolutely thankful to the office bearers of ISMSICS and especially Srinivas, Dr. Srinivas, who's a friend. I still consider him as a friend, but he asked me to talk probably the most controversial topic in SICS, in an ISMSICS meet. So let's see how it goes. And that too against Dr. Ravindra. And I have genuine problems, sir. I was not hoping that you go first. Now, I am of the opinion that first and foremost, what a private practitioner does is his own calling. I have nothing against that. You want to charge more for SICS, that is your call. I know people in my region charging more than ₹1 lakh for SICS, so that is absolutely fine. But when we say that you need to charge more or charge less, you first have to understand what SICS or manual SICS basically solves. So I'll tell you the magnitude of the problem in India. We have people from Brazil here, and they would also have the same problems. Avoidable blindness is the biggest problem in India. Cataract in avoidable blindness basically accounts for 63.2% of avoidable blindness. A RAB study, which was sponsored by Orbis, done in 2016 and published in 2020. This is this decade, not some 15 years back or 20 years back. The leading cause of blindness in Siwan, Bihar was 73% was cataract. Leading cause of severe visual impairment, cataract was 93%. So the number of cases, cataract cases in India are estimated to be around 8.25 million in 2020. I will come to it why I'm giving you these statistics. So what are the barriers to cataract surgery? The basic barriers in cataract surgery are insufficient family income. 71% people have insufficient family income or say so, or the worry about cost of surgery. The attitudinal problem is 20% of them say they worry about the cost of the surgery. So how do you tackle this? While tackling this, the method of cataract surgery has to be cost effective, it has to be low technology procedure, low complication rate, and in the shortest amount of time needed. Does a procedure come to mind? Let's talk of cost of cataract surgery. There are fixed costs, there are facility costs, there are variable costs, which are consumables, implant, and machines. An SICS, a manual SICS, does not have the cost of machines. It doesn't have the AMC, there's no depreciation, there's no replenishing parts. Consumables, well, they are same on both sides. But implant, well, in cases of SICS, you can go for a low cost implant, so it costs even less. When we talk of MSI, sir showed a slide from Arvind. Sir, Arvind has to be taken with a pinch of salt because the amount of surgeries they do, their cost per surgery is far less than what everybody else would be. So in MSICS, the average cost is around $15.34, and phacoemulsification would be $42.10. That is less than half the cost of phacoemulsification you can do an SICS. Why is this important? Because it remains the procedure of choice in high volume, low cost surgery, which is required in a setting like India, which is, let's say, resource challenged to avoid cataract related blindness. It has to be low priced. for logistics of higher volumes to work. If you talk from the surgeon point of view, let's see, from the surgeon point of view, I would always want SICS to be pricing more, but you already have an alternative procedure that you can do, which can be priced more. Sir showed us Mona Lisa. Fantastic, sir. Have you been to the Mona Lisa? Outside the Louvre Museum, you see a structure which was constructed by LM Pai, the world famous pyramid, vast pyramid. Sir, that was not done by hand. That was done by a machine. So skill is both. You can't argue that because you have skill, you need to be charging more. You have skill in both surgeries, as in you have skill in making a glass pyramid. The skill is in the brain. You use machines and you do it. The skill is obviously in painting the Mona Lisa. But there are different skill sets, and skill sets can be cancelled out in this particular setting because using those machines also requires skill. So I believe whatever situation we are in right now, we've gone from a cataract surgical rate of 6,000 per million per year in 1981 to about 8,000 per million per year in 2019. We are still lacking behind. We are not even making a dent in the cataract avoidable blindness. So this is the way we do it, and that is why MSICS has to be low cost, high volume surgery of choice. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ameya. I now leave it for rebuttal. 30 seconds, MSR sir, quickly. You have any rebuttal, or shall we go with the panelists?
I fully agree with my young friend, Dr. Ameya, with the passion that he has. My only point is, how do you generate that money? In my own setup, there are a lot of poor patients come. Unless I generate money, and I cannot buffer off meeting the expenses of poor people. It's fully agreed that MSICS can be cheaper, but I disagree that MSICS being a beautiful surgery with results similar or better than any other surgery, laser or whatever it is, you should not be priced high. I'm against that segment of people who can afford. I do not want to lose them. I would get them. I would give the best to them, much better than any other doctor. But then I would make enough money instead of giving it away to the trade and industry. I would have the money with myself so that I can look after my poor patients. Thank you.
Okay. I think we will ask Dr. Satanshu Mathur, Dr. Boramani sir, and Dr. Parikshit to open. I'm not seeing Dr. Deepak Mishra here. Please switch on your video if you are there. Satanshu sir.
Thanks, Srinivas.
No, one second. Sir, 1 second. Dr. MSR said there is no adrenaline secretion, and the lab surgeon or the cardiac surgeon doesn't disclose his brand. Yes, we all know that. Versus Dr. Ameya raising a very valid point that there are several millions of people waiting for cataract surgery. And if you keep charging them with a high price, how is it possible to eradicate all these Vision 2020 guidelines or goals or whatever aims is possible? Your views quickly on that, please. Mathur sir, go ahead.
Srinivas, like every coin has got two sides. SICS has an advantage of this. If a charitable institute there, we are doing SICS surgery at very low cost. In our camps also we are doing. But on the other side, I totally agree with Dr. Ravindra. SICS is the art. You can tell me, is there any surgery in the world where we can correct the preoperative astigmatism by a simple change of site and change of incision? So if we are putting a toric IOL, we are charging money from the patient. If you are doing SICS surgery without toric IOL, we are giving the patient symptomatic vision. Why we should not charge? Because it is art, and we are confident that we are giving good results. So we should charge equally to the patient. The SICS surgery has changed in last few years to a great extent, and now we can assure our patient we can give them 6x6 vision without any extra IOL. So SICS surgery is not the poor man's surgery nowadays. We should charge as our patient can afford.
Boramani sir, quickly.
Yeah, I just have to make 3 points. I'll just give few examples. As on today, the highest package for a cataract surgery is for SICS, that to a non-premium lens. It is 2 lakhs. I don't think any phaco surgeon is charging 2 lakhs with a non-premium lens. This 2 lakhs is going to become 5 lakhs. Secondly, I'll give two examples. How much a painting of MF Hussain costs and what is his material cost, isn't it? So this is the charge for his art and the skill. Same thing applies for SICS. And I'll give one more example of advocate Harish Salve. Harish Salve, what are his charges and what are his material expenses for the charges? But at the same time, Harish Salve can give free consultation, or he didn't charge a single pay when he represented an Indian captive in Pakistan in the London court. He didn't charge. So this SICS can give this flexibility. If you want to give charity, you can do charity. Most of the charity work is done in SICS only with minimal or no charges. But at the same time, you can have a premium surgery done with SICS and charge more for a paying patient. That is the flexibility of SICS. Thanks.
Parikshit sir, Boramani sir, Satanshu sir, MSR sir, they are all speaking of MF Hussain, Mona Lisa, all those things. Sir, you are the man who appeared for civil services, if I'm not wrong. There are, again, as I said, I'll come back again, lot many people who doesn't have food properly in a day and leave about the affordability for the surgery. What is your take on that?
So finally, what the patient wants is good visual outcome. And if manual small incision surgery gives that good visual outcome without very expensive technology, without very expensive gadgetry, I think that is what makes it special. And that is why it has a global appeal. And I think all the speakers before me have said it. So there's nothing much that I can add. But yes, we can do and we can charge anywhere from 2,000 rupees to 200,000 rupees. But what matters in the end is that patient should get good vision.
Wonderful. As expected, very diplomatic answer, sir. That's why he's a diplomatic man. Thank you very much. Over to Dr. Debashish sir. Debashish sir, yes, please.
Yeah, MS gave an example of Mona Lisa. Well, I would quote Leonardo da Vinci. He said, simplification is the ultimate sophistication. So as surgeons, we must understand that we are, of course, skills are there, but we must simplify it that we can do it predictably 20 times a day and 2,000 times a year. So because we are, that's the volume of cataract surgery we need to do in India. I think the whole debate is on the price. Now, shadow pricing is something that I outrightly reject because I think that your price is guided by the locality you serve. And the cost of cataract surgery for a 65-year-old or a 70-year-old retired person would be the per capita of that person. So if his per capita is 6,000, it's 6,000. If it is 2 lakhs, it's 2 lakhs. So essentially, it depends on where you are located and where you can get most of the patients. Like Ameya said that there has to be, we have to do for everybody. And Dr. MS said that there is a compassionate capitalism. I take from the rich, I give it to the poor, a Robin Hood attitude. But economies are of scale is perhaps the best way to go about things. So it is the best pricing that you give for your surgery, which has to be simple because you have to do it every day. It's not that it's so skillful that nobody else but I can do it. No, everybody can do it. So we need to go on that lines. And whether it's phacoemulsification or SICS, SICS is an incisional surgery and phaco is a nucleus management surgery. We need to understand these two brands of cataract surgery. So I don't go by shadow pricing. We should be very, very conscious of pricing because the way we price, the way our patients show up in our clinic or in our practice or in our hospital or in many hospitals that you have.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, sir. I think he's one of the most successful management guru we have in the present list of speakers and the panelists. Thank you very much. As always, Debashish sir, hands down. So let's move on to our next debate session. For this, I would like to ask Dr. Deepak Mishra, Dr. Satyajit Sinha to please kindly moderate this. So now we have another interesting and a controversial topic. Is immediate sequential bilateral cataract surgery is the next big thing in ophthalmology, will be told by none other than one of the brilliant, benevolent, and the cheerful, compassionate, and an excellent racer who would like to race even in ophthalmology, who is none other than Dr. Cyrus Mehta. Over to you, Dr. Cyrus. I request Dr. Chinmay Sao also to please moderate this. Over to Dr. Cyrus Mehta. Your time starts now.
Hi, has it shared my screen? Can you all hear me?
Yes, sir. Please go ahead.
All right. So thanks very much, Srinivas, for having me on this wonderful debate, and great to see Professor Ashanov here, who is the pioneer of the International Society of Bilateral Cataract Surgeons and the founder. So it's a great pleasure to see him here and to see all the great stalwarts of Indian ophthalmology, great researchers and wonderful surgeons. And, before I start my topic, even though it eat 30 seconds, I've always felt that small incision cataract surgery requires more skill than phacoemulsification. And the reason phaco has become so popular is because it's easier to learn. It's as simple as that. It would take me a lot longer to learn SICS, which I can't do, rather than doing phaco, which is rather simpler. So that is why I think phaco is more popular. The reason is that it's easier to learn, but SICS surgeons are definitely more skilled, and with harder cataracts give better results. So having said all that and kept everyone happy, now I will start with immediate sequential bilateral cataract surgery is the next big thing in ophthalmology. Today, patients expect us to provide them with the vision quality that they enjoyed before they had presbyopia. So nobody wants to be an old man anymore, or an old lady for that matter, and times have changed. Given a choice, no one wants to go back and forth to the operating room twice. They always ask me, can't you just operate two eyes together? It's us that tell them do one and do another one, or it's like conventional wisdom. Uncle, auntie, Mrs. Joshi living on the fourth floor tells, nahi, Baba, tum ek aankh karo, fir dusra aankh karo. But there are some tips that we always follow. You operate one eye, then you change your gloves. You don't have to change your gown, doesn't make any sense. And for the second eye, use everything separate, so that there's no problem between doing one eye and the other eye if you're going to change everything in between. And that's very important. You cannot be using the same handpiece, the same tip, the same DSS, the same viscoat, and everything the same between the two, because that's just adding risk. Conventionally, we are taught if you do immediate sequential bilateral cataract surgery, you might get double the complications like CME, which doesn't happen, endophthalmitis, which doesn't happen. If you change everything between two eyes, you can get endophthalmitis in one eye, but that's the same risk of getting endophthalmitis if you operate one eye anyway. TAS, no, because you're using different solution, different viscoelastic between two eyes. And refractive surprise is kind of not a surprise anymore with new machines like the IOL Master 700 and with the new lens star with the cone. It's really unlikely. We always felt that doing bilateral cataract surgery will give us twice the complications. But if you do a literature review from 1977 down to Sri Ganesh's study in 2016, you will find that the incidence of bilateral endophthalmitis, except in really unsanitary places, done in some really low cost and unsanitary approach, the chance of bilateral endophthalmitis is zero, as you can see here. Of course, you can get unilateral endophthalmitis in one eye out of two, but that's the same risk that you undergo when you do any cataract surgery. Can you ever guarantee 100% the patient will not get endophthalmitis? Also, bilateral cataract surgery is typically done by more experienced surgeons. A beginner doesn't start doing bilateral cataract surgery. So the risk of corneal edema in bilateral surgery is less. And then another doctor doing a unilateral cataract surgery, maybe he hasn't done enough, he hasn't practiced enough. Posterior capsular rent is the same thing. The incidence of having a PC rent in one eye doesn't mean that you're going to get a PC rent in two eyes. So the chance of getting a PC rent in one eye is the same as getting it in two eyes. Sri Ganesh had a study and he found that refractive error out of 2,500 patients was just the same whether he did bilateral or unilateral. And that makes sense because you're doing the measurements on the same machine, and biometry is machine-based and not experience-based. I did some more literature review and found that in thousands of cases shown by other people, there was no difference in complication rate whether you did bilateral or unilateral. And now that COVID came along, Of course, bilateral is much, much better because you minimize doctor-patient interaction. You meet the patient half the number of times, half the exposure to clinic staff, and half the exposure to public transport. Patients always did better with bilateral cataract surgery. There was no comparing the unoperated eye to the trifocal eye. If you do a lot of refractive correction with trifocal lenses at the time of cataract surgery, you will now and then find that if you do one eye, not the other eye, a smart aleck will come back after 3-4 days and say, well, you know, I can read better with the other eye, which is -3. Patients see better and heal essentially in half the time than if they had had unilateral surgery. They heal 10 days in one eye and 10 days in the other eye. And the boogeyman of bilateral endophthalmitis is unfounded. In more than 25,000 surgeries we've done bilaterally in the last 17 or 18 years, we had a 0 incidence of bilateral endophthalmitis. So ISBCS, the new mantra, and we do unilateral cataract surgery if the other eye has already been operated elsewhere. These are the references, and thank you very much. Let me click and exit.
Thank you very much, Dr. Cyrus. I think we'll come back to the debate. Fantastic. You proved your points. So we'll be having our next speaker, ever cheerful, ever energetic personality, the passionate teacher and the crowd energizing singer and a surgeon par excellence, none other than our own Dr. R. Krishna Prasad. Dr. Krishna Prasad, sir?
Yeah.
Please go ahead.
So thank you ISMSICS, and thanks everyone on the panel for getting us in, and thanks Cyrus for setting the stage on fire. I think the planet wants to know, should we be doing both the cataract surgeries or both eyes at the same sitting or in two different sittings? I think the very fact that this is an ISMSICS platform, obviously, I cannot think of doing an SICS with a peribulbar block on both eyes in the same sitting. So obviously, it applies to a very small proportion of ectopical phaco cases only. So it probably makes the whole context, very, very limited in its approach. And he's talking about ISBCS as an event. I would rather call it IBSCS. No, that would be better. Immediate bilateral sequential, because IBS also probably it's like an irritable bowel syndrome for the surgeon. If you actually have committed to the patient, you're going to do both eyes at the same time. If it happens. But till it happens, I think it is going to be an IBS experience for the cataract surgeon. So that is what I would like to start with. So how did this idea come at all? Actually, why did we actually think that can we do both eyes at the same time? Because one novice patient normally asks, can you operate both eyes at the same time, doc? So this is a question from a very gullible, novice, naive patient who just wants to know whether it can be operated. It all happens because we have trivialized the whole cataract surgery. The cataract surgery is a serious affair. It may be a surgery which probably take a shortest of the time with least problem to the patient. But having said that, for the patient it may be easy, but for the surgeon it is no more easy. So it's a serious affair. We go into the eye and do a lot of things. So when we say that it's going to take a very less time, you're not going to have any problem, no injection, no patch, we somewhere push the line across and probably give an idea to the patient that probably we can operate two eyes at the same time, maybe at the same time. Okay, not even sequential. So probably this is where this idea comes in. But let us look at the positives. Let me think like Cyrus Mehta now. Convenience to the patient. I think in India, we have, lot of patients who have a lot of time. Most of the patients who come to cataract surgery are usually old people who are retired, who actually know nothing else to do at home. In fact, even if you push them out, they keep coming to the hospital, much more visits. So I think convenience, I think coming to the OT, coming to the post-op follow-ups and things like that may not really matter much to most of our patients who actually come without an actual reason for any follow-up. In my cases, when they come for a pre-op once, they come for a surgery, they don't come again, they come only after 1 week for their glasses. I think it's just 3 visits. I think for a one cataract surgery for a lifetime, giving them the vision, I think 3 visits to the hospital should at least be the minimum that we must be asking for the patient. I think this visit probably it need not really. And what about the fitness? People may say once they are fit for cataract because of their glycemic control or their heart status or whatever. I think the present day cataract surgery is so less stress inducing. I think the fitness is, I think the only way where I can probably justify a bilateral surgery in the same setting is only that when somebody is a grave risk for GA, and you probably operate both eyes. Like we do some kids with a heart problem, with a congenital glaucoma, we do both eyes at the same time, explaining the benefits and the risks. Probably that is the only thing. But for a surgery for cataract in an adult, I think fitness and doing at the same time probably may not work. I think this is my, I mean, I'm a great fan of Cyrus. He's a Cyrus Mehta. No? He races into the future. He's a futurist. He looks into the future. He sometimes confuses the future for the present. Okay, so that's the reason. He practices in the International Mehta Eye Institute in Mumbai, one of the premier setups in India where all the poshest of the patients go. They understand, they can cooperate, they can spend for that bilateral surgery at the same setting. And there are a lot of things get into the right place with Mehtas. I think majority of people, they come to people like us where we do a lot of jugards. No, we patient, a common man who comes for a surgery is happy to come multiple times for one surgery, forget about operating both eyes at the same time. So let us look at the prerequisites for an IBS-CS. Okay, the choice of anesthesia. Obviously, I told you, you cannot give a peribulbar. Peribulbar surgery sometimes is good for the patient and most times good for the surgeon. I think topical definitely has its advantage, but many a times if you are planning an SICS, okay, in cases where phaco is not advisable, I think peribulbar, obviously the whole idea of doing the same setting surgery goes out of the window. What about consumables and manpower? I think this is very important. So we had a lot of, I thought we change cannulas and use things and we change tips and sleeves, and there's a lot of jugaad again that happens. Biometry and refractive planning. See, it's not about IVOL Master 700 or IVOL Master 1000. You may be right for that type, but when the ELP is ever elusive, once you come back, once the surgery is done, after 2 days, 3 days, 1 week, what is the refraction? Accordingly, we sometimes tailor the second eye surgery, second eye power, even though we cannot go with both the powers and implant in both eyes, and we can be actually, the whole plan goes topsy-turvy because the micro monovision is the present day way to go ahead when you are not putting a trifocal. If you're putting a trifocal, obviously you have to be spot on, and one eye, I mean errors, probably we can repair it in the other eye. So the most important is the infection. I do understand he says that we are great, the infection does not happen, it is equal to both eye, sequential surgery. But what about the sterility of consumables? It's not about OT or your instruments. A lot of things come into your OT on which you have no control. Viscoelastics, your intraocular injections, your epitrates, your pilocarpines, your intracameral anesthesia. What about these things and how do you ensure that? You put in there, you get an infection. If you use the same, even though different vials, probably they may be actually infected. So you have no control on that. So we have two eyes. I think let's take its advantage. Heart, brain is only single. They have no choice, but we can take this advantage. We have two eyes, and obviously, even though they say when they did intracameral, it is 1 out of 14,000 cases had an infection. But for that patient, it is 100%. He has got a bilateral endophthalmitis, maybe facing a bilateral blindness. So it is not statistics. It is that patient is it's 100%. If it is one eye endophthalmitis, patient still has one more. So when you do with two things at the same time, she's writing well with the right hand, but not with the left hand. So let us not try this. I think we should only say one eye at a time and always. And that should be the motto. So let's not have a person who has lost both eyes due to bilateral endophthalmitis. ISBCS or IBS-CS, whatever it is, can wait. I think maybe for long enough till we develop the ecosystem ready for it. Thank you so much, ISMCS.
You can stop the screen share, sir. Wow, wonderful debate again. Thank you, Dr. KP, sir. We have Dr. Amulya Sahu here, Dr. Chinmay Sahu, and we have Dr. Deepak Mishra and Satyajit Sinha. Sir, Dr. Cyrus says 0% of endophthalmitis in few of his studies he mentioned, and low cost surgeon for not maintaining hygiene. That means they should try to maintain hygiene is what Dr. Cyrus says, versus Dr. KP says, if you once had an infection, then you will have a lifelong irritable bowel syndrome. And he says, when you have two eyes, not like one heart or one brain, then why shouldn't you do in a two sitting? Dr. Chinmay is also a vitreoretinal surgeon. I would like to go with the vitreoretinal surgeon's perspective first. Over to Dr. Chinmay first.
Firstly, I would like to congratulate Dr. Cyrus and KP sir for a wonderful debate. Well, from the vitreoretinal perspective, definitely a risk of endophthalmitis is always at the back of the mind. So in a setup which can actually control most of the parameters, and if patient convenience, especially in the COVID era, where patients are worried about coming in multiple times, it can still be considered. However, if there is the slightest, like in India, where there's a lot of reusables, a lot of consumables get reused, and keeping the risk of infection in mind, you have to take a balanced approach. And since distances in cities might be close by, it might be worthwhile still going unilaterally. But maybe if a patient is coming from a village to a center, and where staying back and others is an issue, considering how effectively you can control the infection, a call can be taken. I guess it is a balanced approach. In post-COVID era, I definitely have increased the number of bilaterals that I'm doing because of the concern of the patients who come in. But that's because we can control the parameters in our setups. So I guess you have to have a balanced approach.
Dr. Boramani sir, quickly.
1 point.
No, yeah, you should have a balance option. It depends upon the patient's condition, whether you have to give general anesthesia, patient is very much debilitated, and how far the patient stays and what is his convenience or inconvenience. Depending on that only you decide. But otherwise, I am always with Dr. KP that operate one eye at a time, because everything is not under your control. So don't take a chance and operate both eyes together. That is my opinion.
So 1 point.
Yes, sir. Go ahead, sir. Sao, sir.
Correct, KP. Because SICS, we are not doing peribulbar all the time. We are doing more in topical than peribulbar. So I think KP has to now do a lot of SICS. So and do it topical.
But he said very few are doing topical.
Uh,
Still, majority of SI surgeons are giving blocks.
Yes, Parikshit sir.
Yeah.
So now this is to change.
Yeah.
You're muted.
I just wanted to add, I am very much with Dr. Krishna Prasad on this. For one simple reason, the basic dictum of medicine is do no harm. Now, we are having a paradigm of refractive surgery in which we are operating on a healthy eye. If you're doing a LASIK on -5, you're doing both eyes together. But a cataract is not like a LASIK surgery. It's an intraocular procedure. And it's a procedure that should be done only when the patient has cataract. So one of the premise is that both eyes have cataract, and therefore we are doing both eyes together. A lot of people do it as a refractive lens exchange in which one eye has a cataract, and okay, you're going to need the other eye cataract after 6 months or a year. So we may always do it as well at the same time. But then, as Dr. KP said, there are risks involved, and it is always better to do it sequential. Unless, of course, there are extenuating factors, like I'm a pediatric ophthalmologist, you're doing a 4-month-old, a 4-week-old or an 8-week-old child. We don't do more than 5 weeks now. But then, yes, bilateral is a choice. Or somebody who needs general anesthesia, who is learning disabled, who is extremely debilitated. But to do it as a procedure of choice, I think we are going against the basic grain of medicine.
Srinivas, let's ask Steve for his opinion.
Pardon?
Let's ask Steve for his opinion.
Yeah, no, 1 second. So, Dr. Steve,
yes.
Everybody, this debate looks like it's being rigged towards Dr. Krishna Prasad. So I want to see some smiles on the face of Dr. Cyrus. So can you just throw a few points quickly in 30 seconds?
Cyrus is smiling.
Okay, I'd actually like to talk about both of the last two talks, because you have a different perspective than people do in Canada or the US or Europe. What happened, I've been coming to India for 25 years, and I go all over the world like many of us do when we give lectures and talk to people. And the most apparent thing to me is how much two countries that I've gone to have changed in the last 25 years. One is China and one is India. But they're vastly different because China is communist and China does what the government tells people to do, but India is an open democratic society. In an open democratic society, I have seen no country that's had as much economic improvement and improvement in technology and various things as India has. When I first went there, I couldn't make a phone call across the street because the phones didn't work. And now we're on Zoom. So, you know, it's like you've come into the ultra modern future in 25 years. And this is not a criticism of any person because everyone's equally smart and capable. It's a matter of what resources you have. I think that what's going to happen in India is what's happened everywhere else in the world is as everyone gets wealthier and the economy improves, because India's will, because you have the largest, youngest population of any country in the world. You have a brilliant bunch of people. For thousands of years, India has led the world in academic achievement in many, many things. There's no reason why it will stop. As that occurs, it'll be the same as we've seen in the West. People will want to go to phaco, not simple or cheaper phacos as have been sold to India for the last number of years, but you'll buy the more elaborate, expensive ones that they buy in America, and you will find that your complication rates go down and down and down. As those complication rates go down, people will want more and more bilateral cataract surgery. The same as we always want better computers. Everyone wants the people providing you services to do better. And next, you'll go to femto. Femto is going through the exact same thing that happened when phaco first came out. At first, no one liked it, they distrusted it. And now we're finding out, oh, when we start looking at specific indications, it really is vastly better in some cases. And more, as India becomes a wealthier society, people will push you to doing better things. And it will happen because India is an open, democratic, competitive society. So if you live wherever you are in India, and the guy next door goes to do better phacos or better femtos and more elaborate things and better OVDs and better lenses and whatever, you'll be pushed to do the same thing. And so I think these arguments are really as to where do we stand in the progress of society. We always criticize the Americans because we say, well, America just wants money. But on the other hand, the fact that America keeps pushing money is what's enabled the rest of the world to go along on their coattails and buy things that America produces because of their goals to deal in money, money, money. So, you know, we will all go there and we'll go there at different rates, but I think India will go fast. As you've been going extremely fast for the past 25 years, it will just keep accelerating. And I think things like small incision cataract surgery will be of historical interest, like extracapsular surgery has been in the West, as the country gets wealthier. There's nothing wrong with doing it well because you do it better than we did extracaps because you're 25 years later. But you will go through the same progress and you'll have better machines than we have and you'll do things better. It's my only comment. And you'll do bilateral surgery.
Great. Thank you, Steve. I think we should all stay down because we have a guest lecture by Dr. Steve on bilateral sequential cataract surgery soon after this debate. Quickly, I saw Dr. Pamela raising her hands. Quickly, Dr. Pamela, how is it in Mexico? Do you do bilateral or in two settings?
Yes, thank you. Well, I was thinking, and I do agree with Dr. Parikshit, bilateral surgery is not our first choice in here because we cannot control all the risks that are there. Even though you can actually take care of almost all of them, you cannot actually have the full control of everything. But there are some very special cases when the patient is from very far away, it's their only chance to be in the OR. Maybe you have two really hard cataract with only light perception and it's the only chance for them to get operated, then well, okay, then you should take the chance and lower the risk at the most, but it is not our first choice in here.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Pamela. I think quickly we move on to the next set of debate is from Dr. Partha Biswas versus Dr. Chitra Ramurthy. Dr. Partha, the man with the plan, the great teacher and an admirable human being, a born fighter and a personality down to earth. Actually, he's traveling and just for everyone to know, he's going to go against the population of where in ophthalmology, I think if I'm not wrong, 70 to 80% of them are women. So my dear friends, we open up the topic in men in ophthalmology versus women in ophthalmology. We go ahead first with the first person, Dr. Partha Biswas.
Thank you very much, Srinivas. Thanks a ton. And thank you, everyone, giving me this opportunity to have me in the ISM SICS debate. And I would like to share my slides.
Yes, sir. Go ahead. Your time starts now.
Thank you. So ophthalmology is, and ever will be gender neutral field. So my learned colleague herself, being a female ophthalmologist, feels that female ophthalmologists are less successful than their male counterparts. Isn't it a shame? Fewer career options are there for females. Shameful. Earning lesser than male counterparts. Never, never, never. And here I am to prove her that she's, as usual, always, always wrong. So let me take you back a few decades when we started our journey together in Patna Medical College, my colleague, my friend. We moved apart, built our careers and families in our own time, and there we are. But fate brought us back again, and we both entered the world of AIOS leadership, traveling the length and breadth of the country together. And then becoming chairman ARC, yes, Chitra became chairman ARC as well. And yet, my learned colleague feels females are not given equal opportunities in this field. Why ophthalmology is the best field for female even today? Lesser working hours, lower number of emergencies, no bias against female surgeons anywhere in the world, and even in India. More and more female ophthalmologists taking up this field than before. So let's look at our own IGO, what it has to say. Ophthalmology is a
Partha sir, we are not been able to hear you. Partha sir, are you there? I think it's stuck.
Chitra madam has done something, it seems.
Started out so well.
Ram Murthy's have a reputation.
Okay, I think it's gone offline. So till then, we'll have the leading lady, the exemplary personality, juggling multiple responsibility, yet so efficiently. Here we have our chairman, ARC, none other than led by a wonderful personality, down to earth, Dr. Chitra Ramamurthy. Over to you, madam, please.
It's first and foremost, I feel honored to be invited by this very prestigious society, and of course, my dear friend Srinivas for remembering me for this talk. It's most unfortunate that I really didn't get to hear from Partha. Then my talk would have been a little more, even more effective. So what my deal here is to talk on society and family takes a toll of a woman's ophthalmic career, and it's time for a level playing ground. So let's hear it, friend. We are all aware that Partha's name is synonymous to court martial. In other words, when we talk debate, it is all about fact finding. It's about doing reality checks. It's also about accepting that there is a huge vacuum. It's not just getting personal with one friend or the other. We need to have an idea of a much, much larger picture. Again, my opponent is a very modern thinker, fashionably acceptable in society and very reasonable, apparently. But believe me, had he really spent a little time and looked into it and thought over it, had he viewed the social network, it's not just an ophthalmology and woman, if he had looked at women in general, understood that there are certain constraints, there are certain limits for this woman, in spite of the fact that her IQ and her skill sets are on par with this man, and these obstacles have to be viewed. If you look at her early years, it was a carefree abandon which she had, and had dreams soaring as high as this male counterpart of hers. But definitely matrimony brings a changed roadmap. And then she goes into this popular acceptable word as work-life balance. I wouldn't say that her male counterpart is unreasonable. He has become cognizant of the challenges which do prevail. But having said that, he pawns it off saying that there are flexible hours for her. Of course, she's doing well. And there is this thought of job sharing. But do the men and women get equal maternity leave? Does the man look into depth as to what all is involved for her? Does it mean that she has a crush at the workplace that solves it all? Does it mean that shorter working hours lessen the burden of it all? Believe me, a man's career actually takes off at the age of 30, and a woman's career takes a nosedive. Actually, it's an abysmal drop. She could become a rebel, she could become a divorcee, but then therein comes this idealistic woman who tries to work a balance, believes that getting encouraged would keep her going in this strong concept. At all this is being said, so controversial between me and Partha, let's realize what is the role of a woman. A woman in workforce, there's definitely less attrition. It's a safer secular workplace. It's so conducive to all because she believes in permanency, and she's going to give permanency to the organization she works for. And then you have a chance with so many women in your organization, an ability to diversify and go beyond. If you look at the statistics of a salaried man and a salaried woman or a casual labor, in the two sections, you'll find that at all time points, the man is definitely earning more than the woman. And there is this monster salary index survey which tells that an Indian woman is earning 19% than her male counterpart, even though they are on equal footing. If you look at the labor force participation rate, you'll be amazed that while the Indian economy is growing, a woman is accounting for only 19.9% of the total labor force. And why is that? We need to look into that. We need to analyze these issues and get to the crux of it. If you look at the increasing woman labor force, if you increase it, mark my words, it is said that there's going to be a huge increase in the Indian GDP by 2025. But having said that, with the new automation which is coming in, there are going to be 12 million women who are going to get displaced over this period of time. Believe me, it is not that the woman is being less represented in particular sectors. Even in health and information technology, there is a huge drop. Believe me that if this woman who's working at such a low level were to come up, there would be an entirely different scenario to the Indian workforce, economy, and success. There is this another study which tells us of the Indian International Labour Organization that only 27% of the women actually contributed to the economy. So all this talk about neutral general policies, believe me, it has not led then nor now to gender equal outcomes, because we are challenged by the pervasiveness of the society. We are challenged by unequal opportunities, which has faced this woman time and again at different time points, even in the best of families, unequal growth patterns, unequal promotions. So we need to recognize this. We need to change this gender gap, and we need to be cognizant of the problem this woman faces and give her a free playing field. Look at the gender gap in the pay gap. A woman on an average is earning 65.5% of what her male counterpart is, in spite of the fact that today you acknowledge that her IQ and her skill sets are on par. Believe me, it's not that the woman is not succeeding to that extent because she's less ambitious. If you look at the surgical outcomes, the post-op outcomes have been said to be better in females. I'm not trying to deride the male, but I'm just trying to debunk the myth that the women make worse surgeons. If you educate a man, you actually educate one individual. Whereas if you educate a woman, you educate the entire family. If you look at different researches of International Labour Organization and many more, it is actually more challenging for the cream of society. The highly educated women face even more barriers. And again, let's understand, if you bring this woman into the workforce, GDP would get better. So that means there are these patriarchal attitudes. None of my statistics were old. There is conservatism. There are these religious beliefs. Actually, women are foolish to think that they're equal to men. Believe me, they're far superior and always have been. What happens now is what happened then, a decade or two back. Woman is all about multiple role plays. A woman does 3 times more work at home. If you look at developed countries, the unpaid work done by a woman is on par or far more than her paid work as against a male counterpart. So then it's about redistribution of responsibilities. A woman spends 352 times a day in one statistical understanding as compared to a very minuscule time allotted by the man in question. That means we have to accept that there is a direct, there is an indirect discrimination which is happening. Look at the woman-led companies. Only 3.7% of the CEOs in actually stock exchange listed companies are taken by women. It's similarly so in many of these other companies and even in the Indian politics. But it doesn't mean that women don't excel. But then again, it seems that there is a skew for men being taken into these lead companies as against women. Maybe ophthalmology looks apparently better because there are so many women ophthalmologists who are getting into the subspecialty courses. But if you look at the super specialty, why are they getting stuck? Why are there less entries of these women? It's because of the unequal burden she shares from the time she got married or when she took on greater responsibilities in this society. In other words, to stand on par with women, a woman has to work a lot more harder. So friends, I was just not being unreasonable in my talks. This problem has been eternal, has to be looked into. We need to do something for this woman. And believe me, a woman has already decided that she has obstacle in her path and she's going to go ahead. But if you gracious men would remove this obstacle, this discussion may not happen in the decades to come. Thank you.
Srinivas?
Sir, I
Yes,
must
sir.
accept.
Partha can come in now.
Yes.
Partha, sir.
Yes, I'm
Chitra
there.
madam, can you stop the screen share?
No, I don't know what is happening.
Partha, sir, I don't
Yes.
know. I must accept that at one point of time, it looked like Indira Gandhi is speaking. And I'm sure that, madam, you should go in for the Women and Child Welfare Ministry. I'm sure you'll do a lot of benefit. Partha,
Yes.
sir, it's a big challenge.
Yes.
Take your
You
last.
have said it, Srinivas. You have said it. It is Chitra the eloquence, Chitra the eloquent debater, but nothing more. So let me take you back these few decades when we started our journey together, Patna Medical College. And we moved apart, our careers built, our families, and in our own time. And she cooks, I also cook. She travels, I also travel, and together the length and breadth of the country together. And she became chairman ARC. I also had become chairman ARC. So where is the difference? Let me see. And yet my learned colleague feels females are not given equal opportunity in the field. Why ophthalmology is wonderful for females today: lesser working hours, lower number of emergencies, no bias. Even in India, for female surgeons, more and more female ophthalmologists are taking up this field than before. And look at the AIOS survey in 2015, the ophthalmology as a profession considered rewarding both by male and female ophthalmologists. And these ophthalmologists would recommend to the next generation that to take up ophthalmology. And hours spent on academic activities or hours spent in traveling to international or national, both male and female colleagues were there. So similar is what was there in Australia and New Zealand from a survey of ophthalmologists. If you still do not trust me, Chitra, let me give you some very important examples and rethink on your stand. Can anyone say who is better than the other? Professor Amod Gupta, Professor Vishali Gupta. Can anyone say who is more successful than the other? Dr. Pramod Binde, Dr. Moona Binde. Do you respect one more than the other? Dr. S.S. Badrinath and Dr. Vasanti Badrinath. Did you get one more opportunity than the other? Dr. Harsha Bhattacharya, Dr. Kasturi Bhattacharya. Can anyone say who is more legendary than the other? Dr. Lingam Gopal, Dr. Lingam Vijaya. Will anyone say who is more dynamic than the other? Dr. Srinivas Joshi or Dr. Dipti Joshi? Can anyone say who has contributed more to the field of ophthalmology than the other? Dr. D. Ramamurthy and my dear, dear, dear opponent and my friend, Dr. Chitra. So my message to the next gen of ophthalmologists is ophthalmology is a level playing ground and it will ever stay. So ophthalmology gives equal opportunity and the level playing ground. मारी छोरियों छोरों से कम है कि. Thank you very much.
Wonderful, sir. Wonderful, wonderful. No words to explain. I think two towering personalities, wonderful debate. This opened the eyes of all the audience. And I must say, I must congratulate both the speakers. Quickly, we can go on with, yes, Asau, sir, quickly.
Chitra, if you remember that the strides the woman has taken in 50 years in India, when the first generation of educated people started coming in, it has been phenomenal. So there is no competition, and the males are always backing the female. Maybe in some cases we have to focus more, but generally thinking, the women of India are always liberated. There was only a drop when the invaders came. Otherwise, they have been, in the Vedas also, the women were in the height. Now your Lakshmi is a, finance minister of, your Durga is a defense minister, your Saraswati is a education minister, and what is with the men? Information and broadcasting Narad Muni. So our cultural thing is that women are worshipped and kept only for short time because of our invasions and other thing. We put the burqa down, and that is why our females have been behind. Now they are releasing and they should not compete. They are contributing very well by sustaining the family, because it is not that they have been discriminated. They are civilization makers. So let us not take it a very mathematical way and keep it in a very spiritual way. That's thank you.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, Pamela, quickly, and we move on to the next one.
Yes, I really like both talks, but I have to agree with Dr. Chitra and also with Dr. Partha. I think the facts that Dr. Chitra presented are actually true. Here in Mexico, a lot of the chairmans and CEOs positions, you do not see a lot of women in there. They are almost all men in there. But I also think, as Dr. Partha said, ophthalmology is a great specialty for women because we have a lot of things that make it easier for us since we're the one who had to take care of the children and these kind of things. And also, there are a lot of opportunities. Not everywhere, but there are more opportunities than in other fields. So I just love this discussion. It is great. Congratulations for both speakers.
Can I make a comment, Srinivas?
Yes, Madam Ji, please.
So I think I would agree with Chitra in some way and in most matters, because Chitra would agree, and we've all gone through our battles and our ways of doing things. We have had to work, and I completely agree with her, not as hard but twice as hard as our male counterparts when it comes to doing anything, because it is I'm not saying it is balancing. I don't think there is anything like balance. If you try to balance, you only become mediocre, because to excel you can't balance anything. So I agree with Chitra that maybe the generation which comes now is going to have it much better than what we had. And of course now 80% are females, but it didn't happen when we started off. It was the other way around. Only 10 or 20% were females. So I will agree with Chitra and not with Partha on this.
Thank you, madam. Yes, Dr. Chang. quickly.
Very interesting discussion. You know, ophthalmology mirrors society in many ways, including gender bias, and it has certainly improved. But historically, you know, women have been underrepresented in leadership, particularly in academic departments, and they still are. And certainly, they do earn less. They do less surgery. But we've come a long way from where it was 20 years ago, 30 years ago. And of course, in most residencies now, women are more than 50%. So I think that the point is good that the barriers are much lower. We do have a specialty that is less dependent on call. There's no physical constraints or barriers, but I think where the barriers are now really are at the level of leadership, and it's an unconscious bias, just like racial bias, gender bias is something that we're probably less aware of. But the United States, of course, department chairs are hugely represented in terms of women. And I think that's really incumbent on, therefore, male leadership to not just select more women, which you'll see in speaking and at the podium, but for leadership. But it really kind of comes back to mentorship. You know, we all were mentored by someone, and the needs for mentorship are different for women than for men, and as they might be for different racial groups. And there's nothing like having someone who looks like you and understands you to be your mentor. So I think that's one way to accelerate things. And then the one other point I'll make is that, you know, I think sexual harassment is a huge problem in ophthalmology. And how do I know that? One of our former residents, Michelle Cabrera, did a survey. It was published in Ophthalmology in January of 2019. And this was both women residents and, you know, non-resident women ophthalmologists. And what do you think the percentage was of women that said they had encountered sexual harassment in their career? I mean, you know, I would think this is a fairly minor. Well, it was 60%. 6 out of 10 women said that. About 50% said they had at least one instance in the last 5 years. And I think, as we all know, this has a profound effect. It's unseen. It's all about power. But as is typically the case, many of these women said that this had a lasting impact on a lot of things, including their love of their specialty. You know, it's something they didn't get over. So that is something that I think was very surprising to many of us. And it suggests we need to do a better job, but particularly us as men, in looking out for this.
Thank you so much, Dr. Chang. I think we come to the end, but let me tell you one thing, Chitra madam. Yes, definitely. Thank you, Dr. Partha sir, for taking this difficult job. But I witnessed the wedding of his own daughter, Priyam, and you should see him after getting wedded. When the bidai goes on, he was so much emotional, you know, that he has all the respect for women. But I really thank him for at least taking up the topic, because I needed someone who can speak in men in ophthalmology in this 80% of strong power, because the word woman incorporates men, right? And women are all that, and there's something really more. So it's hats off to the women in ophthalmology. You're all doing a great job. Thank you, Partha sir, for taking up this controversial topic, and you did your work elegantly. Thank you, Chitra madam. You both did a wonderful, wonderful job. Thank you. So we move on to our next, again, hot debatable topic, whether it's the low cost, high number strategy spoken by none other than a surgeon par excellence, a wonderful academician, a delightful, and a very, very dependable personality, who is none other than Dr. Kaushik Murli. He is one of the most important management person of Shankara Group of Eye Hospitals. Again, who would be debated against a prolific clinician, an energetic, appealing, admiring personality with a superb surgical hands. Is none other than Dr. Gaurav Luthra. He says that we need to charge premium for our own patients. So first we'll start with Dr. Kaushik. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Srinivas. I think before I get started, I should congratulate you on the previous topic, considering that today we are on the eve of the National Girl Child Day. I think it is important for us to recognize the inequalities in gender and accept that as a reality and see what we can, as senior leaders in the profession, can make sure that women have a much better playing field, or at least that women should not come in their way. So again, kudos to you for looking at that. So I've just changed my topic a little bit. I'm not going to be talking about money at the bottom of the pyramid, but rather at wealth at the bottom of the pyramid, and about our model at Shankara through this entire discussion. So I take this first slide, which is largely from the economic survey of 2019-20, where the chief economic advisor to the government of India has dedicated one entire chapter that talks about entrepreneurship and wealth creation at the grassroots. And he says that the one who utilizes, he quotes from the Tirukkural, where he says that the one who utilizes all resources and opportunities at hand is an efficient entrepreneur, and nothing is impossible for him to achieve. So the government of India has recognized that there is wealth at the grassroots and you cannot stand to ignore it. Now let's look at one of the earlier speakers quoted from the RAP survey. Another important survey that got completed a year back was a National Blindness and Visual Impairment Survey. This showed that the most severe visual impairment, which was between the acuities of 6/18 and 3/60, so we've changed our definition for blindness in India, is about 1/2 of the population of the state of Karnataka, from where I'm presenting, is about 3 times the population of the state from where my senior colleague Dr. Gaurav is going to be presenting, and is a little more than the state of Punjab that has been in the thick of controversy, or I would say in the thick of national highlight, considering the legislations that are being discussed. So this is the population that we are trying to cater to as ophthalmologists and vision technicians. Again, we know 66% of it is cataract, and we have multiple other conditions that contribute to it. We need to acknowledge and accept, again, saying that India is a land of diversity. So the barriers of accessibility, availability, and affordability continue to remain. And this was highlighted in the survey as being among the top 3 reasons, apart from the need not felt and fear of undergoing this cataract surgery. So we need to understand this is among people who are severely visually impaired with a visual acuity less than 3/60, still unable to get their cataract surgeries done. We are a large country. We are an elephant, 1.3 billion population, 15,000 ophthalmologists as per the IC International Council for Ophthalmology survey. We could argue saying that it is a lot more. We could argue about how many of them actually operate. But if we took this as face value, we're talking of about 11 ophthalmologists per million population. And in India, as per the IAPB Vision Atlas, there were 270 million people with vision loss, of whom about 9.2 million were considered to be blind. And this India is different. The India of Bangalore is different from the India of Hubli, from where Srinivas is, and the India from where each one of the participants here are. Top of a pyramid, we have 8% of our population represented by 27 cities. Right at the other end, 70% of India lives in over 6 lakh or 600,000 villages. If you look at the way the wealth is divided in our country, 1% of our population probably earn wealth equivalent to half our population, and 50% would form less than the tip of our country. This is an India we definitely are not proud of. Dr. Chang mentioned about the strides that India has made, but we still have a long way to go. And while we are at it, each one of us needs to answer this very important question of why do we exist? Whether we are a male ophthalmologist, female ophthalmologist, single practitioner, large practitioner, what is our purpose? That needs to be our compass as we go ahead and figure out what we want to do in our careers ahead of us. Why is this important? We at Shankara started off in a 10 by 10 square foot room, a 100 square foot room, with 5 rupees as the first deposit made into our savings bank account by our founders, Dr. Ramani and Dr. Radha. And we believe that we are not an eye hospital, but rather a movement. Why do we say this? Our founding principles that have guided us over the last 4 decades are that Paropakaratam Idam Shariram, which means God has given us this birth to serve mankind. Serving humanity is equivalent to serving God. And the entire community needs to join together to pull the chariot of service. So that has literally helped us build Shankara as an organization. And that is our compass that helps us decide where we want to go forward. So much to talk about the emotional aspect. Now let's look at the hard facts. Again, Dr. Chitra mentioned about facts being critical. So these are again facts that are in front of us. 70% of the fixed cost, it could vary between 60 to 80%, is towards is our entire expenditure that any eye hospital kind of goes through. And if you were to look at a chart, so again, I've taken a representative of some of our hospitals. If you look at the number of surgeries that they do, the fixed cost per surgery actually comes down as the number of surgeries go down and gradually increases once the volume goes up. Wealth is not just economic wealth, but is also in terms of clinical material. This has allowed us to train beyond the conferences in terms of hands-on training, which has helped people get employment elsewhere, and also in terms of research. What we have done with we don't treat everybody free of cost, but we've set up a mechanism to identify those who are really privileged. And we make sure that for every one person who pays for service, 4 get their services free of cost. The topic that was given to Dr. Gaurav was saying that we are under the garb of charity. Trust me, this garb is not easy to live with. We have NABH and Credibility Alliance that look at the quality indicators and whether we are governed properly. We have the income tax department and other government entities that look at how our revenues come in and how we expense our outcomes. So it is critical for us to understand saying that we need to lower costs and build value. And this we've done through various models. We followed concepts where we've looked to reduce idle time, maximize our equipment usage. We've increased awareness. Temporal SICS is something that we adopted probably for the first time in the country. We have a doorstep to doorstep model to identify beneficiaries. We've used balance scorecards in terms of monitoring our indicators from 2009 and many other such innovations that we have looked at it. But I kind of pause here to ask saying that, okay, what is charity? Charity is doing something useful for society. And what is premium? Premium is spending an amount of money that is more than usual. And I pause to ask you saying that, who are we creating value for? By charging a premium, by using premium consumables, are we creating value for a patient or are we creating value for multinational companies? That is something that we need to acknowledge and understand. While some may look at return on investment, we look at return on impact. While some look at CAGR, we look at self-sufficiency, and both are okay. Like I said, we have found our ikigai. We find our existence in this current format to be worthwhile. We're able to do what we're passionate about. We have a mission to eliminate needless blindness from India. Professionally, we get a huge volume of work to do, and we get paid almost on par with what the market pays our fellow colleagues. So I would encourage everybody here not to get carried away by premium, but find out what you want to do. We are doctors first. We are management professionals or leaders next, and we should not forget that in our endeavor. And today, as we celebrate the birth anniversary of Subhash Chandra Bose, I again use this to remind us saying that you must give if you want to get. And I wear with pride the badge that we as an organization provide world-class eye care with a social impact. And as ophthalmologists, again, let's not forget that miracles cannot cure the blind, but together we can. So thanks a lot, Srinivas, for allowing us to present on behalf of community-centered organizations such as ours.
Wonderful, wonderful talk, Dr. Kaushik. Let's see what Dr. Gaurav Luthra can try to counter these points. Over to Dr. Gaurav, sir, please.
Thanks, Srinivas. And let me share my screen. And I would appreciate, I really appreciate the topics you've chosen, Srinivas, and it's been a fantastic time. So, and Dr. Murli has really spoken so eloquently and made his point. And, I think my point is not going to be contrarian to him, but maybe, a different way of looking at things. And this was the topic given to us. Dr. Murli was to be speaking on more money can be made only at the bottom of the pyramid. And he obviously decided to change the topic for, wealth creation rather than money creation. I was given the topic to speak on people pay up for premium treatment and it's time to come out of charity garb and let's make some money. So let's see what I want to share with you guys. So let's talk about making money. So I have always felt that in medicine, making money is always a byproduct. It's not the driving force. It always follows you for what work you do. So quality, ethical work and satisfied patients automatically bring in money and footfalls. It's not that you have to run after the money. So business models could vary, but eventually it always works out like this, that money should follow you. And if you follow money, you end up going wrong in many places. So with the changing healthcare environment, I think, lots of challenges which are coming up. And of course, different organizations are impacted in different ways. And yes, there are the community organizations which work in a totally different business model than what majority of us work in. So the total logistics and the financials would be totally different. Many of us who are trying to make a living in the private sector don't have the advantages of backing up from big organizations where you could do quality work and yet be paid well for it. So with the changing environment, accreditation becoming mandatory and imposing huge costs on small establishments, where you have to kind of meet all the government requirements, and quality conscious patients pushing you to perform better, decreasing reimbursement rates across the board, government health schemes which are forcing you to work at prices which are well below your cost price, the Ayushman, the CGHS, the ECHS, rapid technology advancements, pushing you to move towards better and better treatment modalities, and patients demanding better results, demanding 6 visual outcomes. So pushing you to adopt newer technology where you can, and you should, and ever increasing expectations from patients from undergoing surgery, to corporatization of healthcare, which has increased the expectations of patients. Patients now walk into a clinic and expect to be in a thoroughly 5-star environment with air conditioning and people serving you tea or coffee. So you're always trying to compete with establishments where the total revenue model is totally different. So, and of course, cost of establishing. A person who comes out and starts practice today, he faces so many challenges of establishing a new practice. First of all, starting with space, rental, land, setting up infrastructure, buying equipment, and then investing in lots of equipment. I mean, you cannot start anymore with a a trial set and a trial frame and an ophthalmoscope, which somebody would start off 25-30 years back, and maybe a small cataract set. Modular OTs, which are mandatory today for any of these setups, big cost on human resources, empanelments, and marketing revenues. All these things put together, I think, many of us find ourselves in a tough situation when starting a new practice, especially for the newcomers. So is quality work possible at low price, high volumes? Well, as Dr. Murli said, only if you have deep pockets to sustain. You can work with donations, you can work with funding from international organizations and schemes. The money obviously has to come from somewhere if you're going to do a huge amount of work. It could come from equipment donations. You could have microscopes and big phaco machines donated. I see that happening all around me, where there are so many charity organizations around me. They just get, Zeiss Lumeras, and they get Centurions gifted to them by various organizations. They don't end up buying those equipments most of the times. Again, cross-subsidization from paying patients, in medical colleges, by the students who are paying enormous fee to study there. That's why they can do low price, high volume work. And then, of course, those very rare organizations, which maybe actually, I see that all around me. So I know that, submitting inflated data of, cataract surgeries being performed and not being performed. So essentially pushing, wrong ways of making money out of it. So I'm not saying that everybody does it, maybe a small percentage, but we were offered to do that by one of the organizations, and we obviously totally refused to do that. So the limitations of a low cost, high volume model. You could end up having compromised quality if you are not supported by big financial support from somewhere. There's no time for the doctor-patient relationship to develop, because you are working at a very low cost and a high volume model. So patients may feel, compromised because they are not attended to as well by the doctor. The operating surgeon may have never examined the patient. You have been screened by somebody else, and you go and just operate the patient and finish it. May not even see the patient post-op. There may be that possibility, as somebody suggested in the previous thing, that if there are compromises in quality because you're working at a very low cost, there may be reuse of disposables, etc. And challenges in incorporating newer and better expensive technology that also encourages mediocrity and compromises in care and morals of the work that you do, the ethics. I'm not saying again that it happens everywhere, but it's entirely possible. I was just reading an example on one of the groups recently, that in the state of West Bengal, the state government is paying through this government scheme just 3,000 for SICS with IOL and rupees 5,000 for phaco with a hydrophobic foldable. Now, I often wonder how this is going to be viable. And it's compulsory. You cannot kind of opt out of it. And if you don't perform this, you can be put behind bars. Now, as we already discussed, the cost involved in a cataract surgery has so many things to it. And let's not forget the doctor's fee. The poor fellow has to make a living and sustain his livelihood of his child. And so I feel that it's totally unviable. And the only way you could probably end up doing this in a small private setup is by doing something wrong somewhere. So essentially, let me come towards the end of my talk. What kind of a cataract surgery would you seek for yourself? Would you seek a good biometry and a good thorough workup, good chair time with you by the
Dr. Gaurav? Gaurav, sir? We have not been able to hear you. I think there's network issues. Anyway, can the admin stop his slide share?
100%.
Yeah.
Okay, I think I'm back. There was a big pause here, so it took me a few seconds to come back. I'm sorry, I'll just finish off.
Yes,
would
sir.
you like to have good astigmatism management? Would you like to have a good microscope, a good phaco machine for which probably protects your cornea and the doctor can see what he's doing? Quality disposables, topical anesthesia, quick rehabilitation, day one good vision, 6/6, maybe N6 unaided. Or would you look for approximate ILPARs, a standard ILPAR being used, minimal contact or talking to the doctor, untreated astigmatism, maybe an average microscope, so many compromises, right? So essentially what I'm trying to say is that if you took your mother for a glaucoma opinion, would you like to have a potentially misdiagnosis? If lucky, you could have an NCT, and if not, no pachymetry, no perimetry, no gonioscopy, glaucoma missed. So low cost, high volume has all the possibility of this happening. I'm not talking about quality setups like the one where Dr. Murli works. And you may be having a glaucoma treatment started based just on the IOP and followed up on Snellen's acuity and IOP control, or would you prefer a proper history, a Goldman applanation with a good workup with the fields and the pachymetry, and maybe an OCT if required, a good gonioscopy, and regular follow-ups with periodic investigations and counseling? I'm sure you would opt for the one on the right side, not a low-cost, high-volume place where you might be missed, where your diagnosis may be missed. So which may be the ideal model? Gradually but steadily build up a quality premium practice. And premium does not mean that it has to be priced premium, because as I said, the money will follow if you provide quality premium stuff. Adoption of new technology to improve outcomes and patient satisfaction. A well-managed, efficient setup, probably with a good EMR system and good patient flows, and eventually leading on to high volume and quality premium practice, and money and goodwill as a byproduct. And the best part is a low-cost subsidized wing providing quality work supported by cross-up. So you could also have a charity wing subsequently where, as he said, as Dr. Murli said, that they cross-subsidize by performing paid services and then using that to sustain their charity wing. So the take-home message from me: there is no substitute for quality, and quality brings premium to the patient, premium outcomes. Quality always comes at a significant cost, time, and effort. And low-cost, high-volume will either compromise quality or will be at a cost to others, which, as I said, can be cross-subsidized. Quality never goes unrewarded, so money will be a byproduct, and profits can be easily used for quality charity work as well. So it's a win-win situation all the way if you decide to take this path. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I think you made up your points really well, and you got back on the track really well. So I now open it to the panelists, Sahu sir, Dr. David Chang, Dr. Boramani. Sir, Dr. Kaushik says that 70% of the Indian population is under below poverty line. More than 6 lakh villages exist in India. And are we working for the companies or are we working for ourselves? Whereas Dr. Gaurav says, if you need top-end machines, if you need a good workup, you need increased investment. Increased investment leads to increased money, increased premium. So your takes on that, please. Dr. Sahu, sir?
See, I have decided from the beginning in Bombay, they were doing charity with the business people. We are opening charitable hospital, doctor, we are giving them time. That is the time I have decided, if I have to do charity, why I not start in my home? So charity begins at home. So what we have decided, a premium practice is one place and charitable in another place, so that they don't get mixed up. Those who cannot afford the charity, and those who can afford, they can go to the premium class. So instead of saying charity is bad or charity is good or a premium practice, and so their division really works for us, because then there is no problem. So the poor people we are not neglecting, and we are able to give them the best of service in our premium class there. So this is our module, and this should be our model, because people like Gaurav and once you have come to a stage, you must think to return something to the society also. Without a commitment to the society, earning itself has no satisfaction satisfaction, because then you accumulate money and it is worth nothing in the end. That is my approach.
Thank you, sir. Dr. Mathur, sir, your points, please.
Srinivas, I agree with Dr. Saul, sir. We have to take care of the poor people also when we are in India. But Gaurav is very right. In the era of this legal forum where the legal cases are going on against doctors and lot of cases, we have to be very up to date. We have to be very competent staff and very competent machines. Everything we should have with us to avoid any legal liabilities. Second thing, as for Shankara and Arvind are concerned, they are okay because they have very big setups. They have very good number of cases, so they compensate the money by that. But an individual doctor like me and you, who has in our own hospitals, government is not supporting us anyway. So to keep in the market to up to date, we have to invest a lot, and we want return. I agree with Dr. Saul, sir. We could start charitable institution. I am running a charitable institution separately. So other person are doing, many are doing, but for compromising with the because of lack of money is not we have to, and our machine, everything should be very new and set up. I agree with.
Yeah, thank you, Doctor, so much for your views. Boromani, sir.
No, as such, there was no major debate in this because the equations are different at different places. The place where Dr. Kaushik Murali works, though it's a charitable organization, it's a premium charitable organization. So the equations are totally different. So I agree with both of them. What Dr. Gaurav says, like a private practitioner who has got a lot of pressure on him, a lot of equipmentation, investment, pressure from the legal cases. So you have to work and try to find out a balance. So you have to somehow recover the expense. If you're doing a premium work, you should charge more. So the equations are totally different at premium charitable institutes and other regular small charitable setups. So there the equations are different.
Thank you. So before we go on to the next talk by Dr. Nito Rosatelli, I request Dr. Chinmay Sahu, your quick 10 seconds, please.
I would agree with everyone on the debate out here that the cost of investment and the cost of running a practice is pretty high at this point, and there is a role for a premium practice. At the same time, we have to work with compassion. So as my father said, that we do run a charitable wing where we take care of our commitment to society. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Over to Dr. Jagdish.
That was a wonderful wonderful debate from all the speakers. Now we move on to our international speakers. We have here none other than Dr. Nito. He is actually completed his residency from Brazil, and he's a cataract surgeon with the Brazilian public health system. He's going to talk about the nucleus spin, and you'll be amazed by his spin on the nucleus. It looks like a roulette. Just go ahead, and I invite Dr. Nito to go ahead with his talk.
Dr. Jagdish, until Dr. Nito comes back, can we start with Dr. Steve Arshinov, please?
Yes, please. Oh, sure. Dr. Steve Arshinov is actually teaches his ophthalmology residency program at the University of Toronto. And he is working with a unique idea of this IVAN, a mobile ophthalmological unit, which was a joint venture between the Canadian National Health and the Physician Service Organization since 1972. And you all know him from the recent award. He was an awardee of an Outstanding Humanitarian Award due to his committed service for the Northern Ontario region. I welcome Dr. Arshinov, Steve, to present his talk. Go ahead, Dr. Steve.
Thank you very much. Let me just share my screen.
Thank you, Dr. Steve, for accepting the invitation. Before we go on to your talk, I would like to thank Dr. Kaushik Murali and Dr. Gaurav Luthra, who did a wonderful job. Of course, each have their own perspective, but you both did well. Thank you very much for coming to be an ISM-SICS panel. Over to Dr. Steve.
Okay, thank you. Can you see my screen? Yes, I hope?
Yes.
Okay. Well, first, thank you for inviting me to take part in this really excellent conference and discussion. It's interesting, after I heard the Indians talk about bilateral surgery, what I'm going to add. But I guess I was the one who dragged a lot of the world, sometimes kicking and screaming, into the subject. So I guess I have to tell you my thoughts and how I look at it. I think that bilateral cataract surgery really has exploded with the COVID-19 pandemic. And I'm going to talk about some of the issues that go along in bilateral cataract surgery and how we can do things and how we can do things a bit better. These are my disclosures, none of which apply to this particular talk. So I have no relevant disclosures to this, except to say that since the pandemic started in March of 2020, I've given 20 webinars globally on bilateral cataract surgery, and not just in Canada and the US, but in Europe and Indonesia, in India and Bangladesh, and all kinds of places who are looking at maybe bilateral cataract surgery is useful as we go along and we have to deal with the pandemic and the risk of infection. So it's interesting when I think about how I do my bilateral surgery, and now I'm doing femtos and how we've progressed, because cataract surgery, as you all know, of course, started in India with the Sushruta, and it took 2,200 years before Daviel changed from couching to do extracapsular surgery. And then, only 10% of that 200 years until Ridley got intraocular lenses, then again divided by 10, 25 years till we got phaco. And then some were branching off to doing manual small incision cataract surgery, an evolution of extracapsular surgery. And then now we have all different groups, and many of us have gone from phaco to femto and now to bilateral cataract surgery. Bilateral cataract surgery is common, mostly with phaco, but some with femto and some with manual small incision cataract surgery. And the difference, I think, is the concept, because when we do unilateral surgery, we're really fixing an eye, a peripheral receptor. Whereas when we do bilateral cataract surgery, we're fixing the patient's perception and their vision. And so the people who have bilateral surgery really look at us differently the next day and how they perceive their surgery, because they came in not seeing, and within one day they're seeing in both eyes with proper stereo and what we plan for their refractive outcome. So when we talk about bilateral surgery, I'm really not aware of any specific publications showing bilateral surgery to be worse than unilateral surgery in any aspect that was studied. So when you ask why we like to perform bilateral surgery, it's because I just think it's better for the patient than for everybody else who's concerned once you get all the complexities down and have it ironed out. And why is COVID encouraging it? Well, if we do, let's say, 20 cataract surgeries, we can now do that in 10 patients. We have fewer people around to take care of these people because there are fewer people. And so there's less transmission of COVID-19. Time is saved in cleaning the operating room, and the OR turnovers become quicker. And bilateral surgery has been shown to be safe and effective, and so why not? Admittedly, it's one of those things I said before in our discussion that it's another added thing we do, which makes our life more complicated, but in the end makes our service to our patients better. So when would you embark upon bilateral surgery? And my reference is primarily for phaco. And I think it's the same for whatever type of surgery you're doing. You consider doing bilateral surgery when every single small step of your surgery has been perfected. When you know how to dilate pupils, you can do it consistently, you can manage small pupils, you know which OVDs you want to use, you're familiar with multiple OVDs and how the complexities are different in dealing with each of them. You know your phaco machine or your instruments, and you're proficient in changing your settings and dealing with it. You don't have complications in doing IA, you become good at it. Your biometry is good, you choose lenses well, you don't get a lot of errors, and your implantation technique is down to where you have very few complications. I also think it's essential that when you consider bilateral surgery that you use intracameral antibiotics. You must do surgery such that your incisions routinely seal well, always, not just sometimes, and that you have excellent post-op drop and follow-up routines so that patients go through sequentially without having problems. And of course, you can't use patches if you do bilateral surgery because patients can't see if you use patches. So I'm fortunate in that the first sort of modern large-scale study on bilateral surgery was done by me with Yining Strub and Renit Yagev. And the thing that actually surprised me in doing this whole study back in 2002, when we published in 2003, was we had very, very few complications. We had actually fewer complications than we had in unilateral surgery. And I just sort of sat back and waited for the flack. And then I noticed that in the same year, Björn Johansson and Lund from Sweden wrote the same thing. Their study was only 1/5 the size of ours, but they also were doing bilateral cataract surgery and not having complications. And then so were the Finns, who tend not to publish their data, but if you ask them, they tell you. And then the group in the Canary Islands was actually going through a study which they gave to the government of Spain and had it approved by the whole political process of Spain, so that bilateral surgery was approved in Spain as being equally safe and effective as unilateral surgery. And so all of a sudden there was a whole movement in different parts of the world independently to look at doing bilateral surgery. Among the talks I gave earlier this year was an interesting one that was in French. When the University of Montreal asked me to take part in this symposium, and Marie-Ève Legaré, who had come and studied in Toronto, was now the chief then, and the entire university, the entire department had converted over to doing bilateral cataract surgery. And they started off doing just a few, 6% in 2016 to 17, but we're doing over half a couple of years later. And the interesting thing was they had followed my protocols and those of the International Society, and they found their postoperative infection rate was the same as we reported in what we thought was our elite group doing bilateral cataract surgery of less than 1 in 14 or 15,000, which are the lowest infection rates reported in the world. So they were doing quite well. But if you look at manual small incision cataract surgery, you have to remember that the first person to do extracapsular surgery, Jacques Daviel in 1747, did bilateral surgery. And he did the left eye first, which I do, not for whatever reason related to him, but I just like to do always the same eye first because it decreases errors. And Jacques Daviel performed 434 extracapsular surgeries and said that he had an 88.5% perfect success rate, which is not bad for 1747, not bad even for 1947 or 1967. Our society started in 2008 when the various groups I mentioned before got together and wanted to discuss bilateral surgery so that as we thought it would spread around the world, it would be done safely. And we worked for a long time to find rules. We have one absolute rule, and that is if you have an unresolved complication in the first eye, don't do the second eye. But we also all agree that the best time to do the second eye is immediately after you gain the experience of the first eye, because the second eye then is always easier. We put together this document, which we published online in 2009, and we called it General Principles of Excellence, not guidelines. We thought guidelines were kind of, a rough way of saying you should do this. But people who follow these suggestions tend to have very, very few complications in doing bilateral surgery, and no matter how they do their bilateral surgery. And it's again, 2 websites. So then I talked with various groups, and I met the Help Me See group, went to New York to meet those who run it, and went and had them at a meeting of ours. And they're planning to expand and do multiple bilateral surgeries using primarily small incision cataract surgery. I also got to give 2 webinars with the International Society of Manual Small Incision Cataract Surgery, one with your main group, and both were in June, and then one with the Egyptian group. And I was impressed with the willingness of this group to make sure everything was safe and done very well, whether doing unilateral or bilateral cataract surgery. So the question is, do we have exclusions for bilateral surgery? And we do. We have, diabetic macular edema, blepharitis infections, Fuchs dystrophy, and various things that we all look at as being making the cases more complicated. But I can tell you that over the time, as you do more and more of these cases, your exclusions become reduced. So I don't do borderline corneas because I don't want the patient to have bilateral corneal edema. And if the cornea is more than 650 microns, it's high risk to do both eyes. I don't do patients that are septic, obviously, but there was a case reported with a bilateral infection before after doing someone who is septic. And I don't do posterior polar cataracts. I'll know now that I do them with the femto, they're not really a problem, but I still haven't done posterior polar cataracts that I knew were going to rupture with phaco. In terms of second eye deferrals, because of a problem in the first eye, I only had 7 in 10,000 eyes over 20 years. And so that's not really an issue anymore because it's very, very rare, and it's just very unusual patients. The last one I had was the person who was unhealthy and basically became unresponsive starting his first surgery because of his hepatic failure. And so we just deferred his second eye. In terms of IOL exchanges, because of refractive errors, I've had none since we've used the IOL master for more or less 20 years. And then we began to do them as femtos. And Laurent Lalonde told us that we should try doing femto, femto, phaco, phaco, rather than femto, phaco, femto, phaco. We've been doing that for a few years with no complications. And we found that actually the femto is extremely helpful for dense cataracts, for white cataracts, for moderate to severe pseudoexfoliation, for fibrotic capsules, myotonic dystrophy, you have very peculiar elastic capsules, and for posterior polar cataract. So we're finding femto is not just to make more money, but there are some people in whom it makes the surgery much simpler and it goes much better, especially for bilateral cataract surgery. I like to push the fact that we must use antibiotics, and we gave this talk. I gave this talk at the ASCRS the last time we had one in person in 2019, and our group won an award, which was very nice. It was fun to give a talk. But the point is,
can we conclude it, sir?
Yes, I'll finish in a short time. Antibiotics work, and we should use them. Then I think we should not use patches. This is my drops that I use routinely post-op, and it works. And I start the drops an hour post-op. The patients do very well, and it costs very little in terms of Canadian money because, you know, we have more money than other countries, perhaps. It works very well. So in summary, the rationale behind bilateral surgery is we fix the visual system, not one peripheral receptor. It's better for the patient, it's better for the family, it's better for society, and better for the insurer. And due to COVID-19 cleaning requirements, everyone now is more interested in doing bilateral cataract surgery because it makes your operating room run more smoothly and exposes the patient to less risk. So in summary, bilateral surgery is currently increasing rapidly around the world, spurred on by COVID-19. If you're going to do it, please follow our general principles of excellence because it does decrease your risk in doing the surgery. The main reasons to oppose bilateral surgery turned out not to be verifiable. The risk of bilateral simultaneous infection occurs only if you don't follow our principles. And the need to adjust the second eye, IOL power, doesn't actually occur if you use modern biometry. And the real issue in many cases is money. And COVID-19 is allowing us to do what we thought for a long time is best for the patient, but it was one extra thing. And that's how I see it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Steve. That was a wonderful talk. We'll come back. We have a lot of questions coming up. We'll come back for that. In the meantime, Dr. Nito, could you go ahead with your talk, please? Dr. Nito?
Can I start sharing my screen?
Yes, sure. Please go ahead.
Okay. Hello, my friends. It is a great pleasure and honor to be here with you today. And I would like to thank Dr. Amulya Sahu for the kind invitation.
Can you increase the sound a bit, sir?
I'm going to present here a technique that I developed some 10 years ago that is of immense help in my surgical practice, the nucleus spin. What is the nucleus spin? It's a fast and repetitive nucleus rotation. That's the reason I named it the spin, in both clockwise and counterclockwise directions. The spin is performed after hydrodissection, and it's not that small and simple nucleus rotation intended only to free the nucleus. The purpose of the spin is cortex release, which is achieved because the nucleus rotations drag epinucleus and cortex along, detaching them from the capsular bed. But why cortex release? Why is it so important? Cortex management is an essential step. All cortex must be removed during surgery. It is a time-consuming step, including the need to switch probes. Cortex removal can present difficulties. Subincisional, equatorial, and posterior capsule adherent cortex can be very challenging to address. Intraoperative meiosis can hamper cortex visualization, making its removal troublesome, and cortex remains may ensue. Most importantly, it has been shown that most posterior capsule rents happen during cortex management. For all these reasons, it is clear that it would be extremely beneficial to facilitate or completely eliminate this step. Two maneuvers can help. One is the well-known and universally used cortical cleaving hydrodissection, but it often is not enough to achieve that. In conjunction with the nucleus super or over rotation, the spin, complete cortex release is achieved in the vast majority of cases. The spin technique is simple. It should be performed right after hydrodissection with or without hydrodelineation, under irrigation by the fecal probe or under OVD, using an instrument like the chopper itself or a Sinski hook. The spin maneuver can be performed in both fecal and manual cataract surgery. Multiple clockwise and counterclockwise rotations are performed, first in one direction and then the other. Usually 5 rotations in each direction is sufficient. Around 10 ensures complete cortex release in almost all cases. During the maneuver, cortical and epinucleus matter is expelled from the back. It can be aspirated for visualization purposes. The spin is very easy to learn and to perform. No special instrument is needed, and it is easily incorporated in the surgical routine. It is a fast maneuver, which saves a lot of surgical time when complete cortex release is achieved. As the forces are applied in a tangential manner to the entire zonular apparatus simultaneously, it is very zonular friendly. Cortex release and expulsion provide free space in the capsular bag, which is useful during nucleus management. When properly performed, it completely eliminates the cortex management step, saving time and providing safety. It would be logical to speculate that the maneuver friction removes lens epithelial cells, potentially diminishing the posterior capsular opacification rate. Let's watch some spin examples. As you can see, first clockwise rotations and then counterclockwise ones. The farther away from the center you push the nucleus, the more grabbing power and control you have, but always respecting the rex's mark. All grades of cataract can benefit from this spin. As the spin progresses, cortex and epinucleus material comes out of the bag, and space is provided for nucleus management. Gentle back and forth movements can be employed until nucleus is free. Then nucleus rotations follow, 10 in each direction in this case. Nucleus management is done with your preferred technique. And most of the times, after nucleus management, no cortex is still present. Great. please visit my YouTube channels with lots of surgeries and different techniques. Search Neto Rosatelli and you'll find them. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Dr. Nito. That was a lovely presentation.
Thank you, Dr. Reddy.
Thank you. And then here we go to our next speaker, Dr. David Chang. And every one of you must be knowing him. He's the star in ophthalmology. He graduated from Harvard Medical School and he did his residency from UCSF. He is an AAO Lifetime Achievement Award recipient.
Yeah. Dr. Jagdish,
yes.
Can I just interrupt? Actually, Dr. Meenakshi Swaminathan has not been able to connect. Dr. Namrata, madam, are you there?
Yeah, I'm there.
Yeah, so can we just take her points first and then we can go with your presentation? She's not able to do the screen share. Okay. There's some technical glitch from that side. Meenakshi, madam, you're able to hear us?
Yes, I can hear.
Okay, can we go ahead with your presentation? So last debate we would like to have, and then we'll go on with Dr. Chang and Dr. Boris Malugin. So we have is the fellowship soon after post-graduation, especially for female ophthalmologists. You know, some set of people say that, no, you have to join immediately. The family can definitely wait versus there's some members say, no, you first have to have family and then take up ophthalmology. So that's the kind of, again, a very hot debate topic. So with that, we have two very eminent speakers, the ever young dynamic personality, a prolific leader who is none other than a secretary of AIOS, an amazing surgeon and a role model for the budding ophthalmologist. We have Dr. Namrata Sharma, against the ever enthusiastic academician with multiple accolades to her name. And she's already on vacation with the family. And that itself shows that how family is important, which Dr. Namrata madam picked up when we both were discussing about this topic, that she's already a family person. So she's an inspiring personality and a brilliant pediatric ophthalmologist. So first, shall we go ahead with Dr. Meenakshi Swaminathan madam, please, if you permit, Dr. Namrata madam?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Meenakshi madam, you can speak little loudly and you can go ahead.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Dr. Jagdish, you are able to hear?
Yeah, we can hear.
Yeah, go ahead, madam.
All right. So a very big hi to all of you from Goa. I'm sitting on an island when there is hardly any connectivity here. I've tried 3 dongles and without much success. So I'm sorry I'm doing the debate over the phone, but I'll try to make my points very clear. So my topic is family milestones can't wait in ophthalmology, but ophthalmology can. So of course you're going to ask the first question, why not do both together? What is this question of waiting? Why don't we compare the two challenges? On one hand, we have the pregnancy and motherhood. On the other hand, we have residency and fellowship. Pregnancy and motherhood is maybe fraught with medical complications of pregnancy, exposure to the pathogens in the hospital, and you may end up needing a cesarean section. You need time for baby bonding and breastfeeding, and some of us also have to deal with postpartum depression. Whereas if you look at residency and fellowship, it's not without its own challenges. Long hours on your feet, and you have to be on call, and you may have to go out on eye donation call. And also many hours of studying maybe involve longer duration in the OR, and both assisting and performing surgeries. There also peer group comparison and lack of support is not unusual in many of the programs for both fellowship and residency. Of course, there are many studies from around the world. Some reports say that there is the culture of medicine may be contributing to miscarriages among female physicians who are hesitant to even talk about these things to their program director or to their colleagues. So I know there are people who say, you know what, it's okay, go ahead, we'll give you maternity leave. But you know, the waters of maternity leave are really murky. 2018, the Medical Council of India said, you know what, we're giving 26 weeks for PG degree female resident doctors. This applies to everyone. And then the national board first said, yes, and jumped on the bandwagon. Soon, many corporate hospitals put the pressure on the national board. now National Board has slowly withdrawn that offer and said, you know what, you have to do an extension even if you give a maternity leave. All that is well. For fellowships in private hospitals, really there are no rules. So it's quite a nightmare trying to do both a fellowship and get pregnant at the same time. There are many blogs around the world which also talk about that the pressure of having a baby during residency or fellowship can even strain the strongest relationship. So really, what are the perks of having family first? Usually, I mean, having the family first and then deciding you want to do a fellowship. The spouse usually settles financially by then. In India, the fellow's parents and in-laws, who are often still young, can take care of kids. And then you can go on and do your fellowship. You may be able to afford childcare if you want to have a babysitter. So give yourself a break. Don't have a baby during your fellowship or residency. That is even bigger reason for you to first have your family, finish off your family. Endometriosis. 25 million Indian women suffer from endometriosis. Then this is important risk factor is delayed pregnancy and conception. So does endometriosis cause infertility? Of course it does. 30 to 50% of women with endometriosis may experience infertility. I will share with you very quickly personal experience as a resident. I finished MS from PGI at 28 and then underwent a long treatment for infertility due to endometriosis, and then had children during my American residency and 5 weeks of maternity leave. That's all after a cesarean section, and I had to run back to my residency. I sometimes feel I hardly even knew what happened to my kids in those 2 years. But my experience as a program director, I found many fellows and post-EO candidates who have taken a break to have a family and then come and join. They are usually very exemplary. They value time, they are more mature, they know all about work-life balance. They work harder because there is more at stake. All these myths and fears of loss of surgical competence, attrition in knowledge, availability for calls may not be there because they may run away citing kids, distraction from kids, and maybe they'll take more leave. All these are unfounded fears and myths. So my final slide actually showed a woman having multiple roles and multiple hands and avatars, including holding an ophthalmoscope, saying she will be a super mom, she will also be a super fellow, and she will be a superwoman. So that's all I have to say. So go ahead and have your children, and then ophthalmology can, be waiting for you to come and grab the bull by its horn. And thank you so much. Thank you for this unusual way I had to present my debate, and I wait to hear my worthy opponent, Dr. Namrata. Thank you so much, Srinivas. This was fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you, madam. Your points very well taken. So let's hear from another bandwagon. Madam says that no. First finish your PG fellowship and everything, and then go in for family. Open to Dr. Namrata, madam, please.
I think I came to the last slide first. Sorry about this. So this is about post-graduation, and after post-graduation, there is an eternal question as to what to do. I think this is an open and a closed debate. I mean, there is no doubt whether it's a male or it's a female or it's a it's this boy like this, he is going to go in for a fellowship, so why not all the girls? So it's, for me, there is no debate at all. It's a open and a closed case. So I can just stop here, because I do not believe that there is any debate about this at all. Now, just see the way our, this is our post-graduation ceremony we held just last week, and look at the excitement that these people, both boys and girls, have. And for them, the sky is the limit, and they are the dreamers and they are dreaming. And just look at my girls, they are jumping higher than even the boys. So how can you stop them from doing anything? I don't think. They are completely unstoppable. Some of the boys are not even making an effort to jump. So you can see, look at the enthusiasm and look at the cheer on their faces. So why do you need a senior residency and a fellowship? I think you need a senior residency or a fellowship, whether you are in private practice or you are in academics, to gain extra qualification. So to gain extra qualification if you're applying academic job, and to gain an extra skill if you're doing a private practice. So you need it for both, and it gives you another kind of confidence, and you need that confidence. You may do in whatever subject you like. It does not matter. You have to be the best. It does not matter. Sometimes you get the subject of your choice. Sometimes you do not get the subject of your choice. Again, like I say, it does not matter, because you have to excel. Whatever you do, excellence is the key. You can do long-term or short-term fellowships. And earlier, what used to happen is that people used to take short-term fellowships. But one has to remember, fellowships have a time duration. Senior residency has a time duration and also has an age limit. This time is not going to come back to you. The time that if you don't do your fellowship, or if you don't do your senior residency, it's not going to come back to you. You have to catch the time, and before the frame shifts, you have to be actually a part of that frame. Now, if you are planning a long-term fellowship, which is 18 months or 20 months, and I say that for boys and girls both, I don't differentiate between the two. It should be done immediately after your post-graduation. And if you're doing a long-term fellowship, then it'll be for about, say, 18 months or 2 years or 3 years. And 2 years or 3 years in anybody's life is really not too much, to give yourself. And of course, you can even do short-term fellowships, which are 3 months. It doesn't matter. You should do a fellowship because, like I say, it gives you a different kind of a confidence, and it hones up your surgical skills. You are abreast with the recent advances and also the hands-on training. Now, a word about overseas fellowship. I would say that for boys and girls, if you ever get a chance, please do an overseas fellowship. It's a different healthcare system. It is a different background. It is a different culture. It is a different way of looking at things. And again, it gives you a different kind of confidence. Of course, the downside could be that it could be a financial challenge. The question will remain, at what time? And I would always say, as soon as possible. I know that in the olden times, whenever there was a change in technology or techniques, people would, go for observership at places, and that is an option which can also be taken now. That is a possibility, but a fellowship which has got a certificate, a fellowship which has got a stamp. These are just milestones. You do your MBBS, you do your MD, you do your fellowship, or you do your senior residency. And then actually what you become in life is what you become. So why fellowship now or as soon as possible? Because time is on your side. There's a cutthroat competition which increases only exponentially each year. And your career clock is ticking. Unfortunately, your career clock for that fellowship or for that senior residency is only 2 to 3 years, or gives you a window of only 4 years. But your biological clock is longer. You have about 10, 15 years. So the clock which is ticking shorter should be, those milestones should be finished first. So like I said before, catch the frame before it actually moves out, and you have to make your own space. And whatever you may say, it is the survival of the fittest. I said earlier, I say this now, and I always maintain. I used to get earlier talks on balancing personal and professional life. And I always used to think, where is the balance? There is no balance. Balance is an illusion, and it leads to mediocrity for boys and girls both. It's not only about girls, or it's not only about boys. Your focus has to be sequential. It has to be event based. You have to focus at all fronts, but it may not be simultaneous. You need not try to hold both the fronts together at the same time. Do your fellowship first, and then you can always focus on more intricate parts of your family. And of course, one has to strive for excellence, and that is the bottom line. It also enhances your self-esteem, because it is something which is inevitable. Even if you are looking at the domestic front, in your subconscious mind, you will feel guilty about not giving yourself time. It will be there like a mental load on your mind. And it is important that you don't take the back step so early. There are multiple roles, and when the time comes, we are capable of managing these multiple roles, but that can happen at a later date also. So one should not be jack of all trades and master of none. And like I said, sequentially, one should plan one's life and one's career and one's family. And I know that it is possible. The family supported you first, you ask them for the support again. If they've supported you for so many years, they will support you for 2 to 3 years as well. Now, it does hamper learning if you do fellowship at a later date, because a student lifestyle, a learning, a learning mindset is different when your age catches up on you. And again, for long periods for academic, you may not be able to travel abroad at a later date. Now, if you look at this whole uh, chart, this is from 10 20 10 20 20 to 30 30 40 50 50 60 and 70 years. This is going to be your active life. Now what are we asking for? We are asking for just this red window when you finished your post graduation at 23 years and you have to do your fellowship. So it's hardly 3 to 4 years that we are actually asking for. We are not asking for much. And what happens after this age when your children actually go to other to their own careers to settle, and then you would realize that if you did not work in this red zone, you have nothing to do here. So it is best. So it is best to work in this zone so that your entire life is taken care of. And my worthy opponent herself has done 2 fellowships, not only in India but also abroad. So I will not say much about it. And look at this again. What has this half of the postgraduates done not to do a fellowship or a senior residency, as opposed to this half who are definitely going to do a senior residency or fellowship? I think all of them are equal, and I'm sure it is possible with mutual understanding. It is possible to do it. Like I said earlier, the support of the family is very important, and you have to ask them for an extended support for 2 to 3 years, so that they support you and they help you to to do your fellowship or your senior residency, whatever you want after your post graduation.
Wonderful, madam. Wonderful. Thank you very much. And I would like to ask Dr. Chang, Dr. Boris, Dr. Sahu, and Dr. Nito to quickly chip in. So there are 2 sets. Dr. Meenakshi Swaminathan says endometriosis, in vitro fertilization is increasing, maternity leave versus are we doing justice to the kids when we have kids while doing the residency or fellowship? Versus Namrata madam rightly said, no teaching experience if there is no job not much of job opportunities. Dreaming big is very, very important. As our dear president, Dr. Abdul Kalam, also says that dream is not which you see while sleep. Dream is something which does not let you sleep. So madam says that students, the female postgraduates, also should dream and dream big. Very valid point. 2 to 3 years of fellowship should not matter. Overseas fellowship will definitely broaden your horizon. As I did my fellowship in Toronto, myself and Dr. Deepthi, we both did it. Definitely, it's a kind of feather on the cap. And madam says that career clock is ticking, whereas biology clock can wait. Now, the debate is open. Yes, Dr. Chang, what do you say a few words about it?
Not exactly my area of expertise, but I enjoyed listening to both sides. I think this is such an individual decision, but it does point out the conflict. By the time you go through all of your training or subspecialty, for most women, they're already at 30. Their spouse may not be in ophthalmology, so there's a lot of pressures from both directions. It's clearly an individual decision. But I would say that it would be nice if fellowship programs could be open to people that have maybe been in practice for 3 years or 4 years, and there's no reason you couldn't go and do a fellowship at that time. So some of it is just the inflexibility of the matching system.
Sahu sir, I know you have always been on a holistic approach and a spiritual approach. You have been guiding all through. What are your views on this, sir?
Most of the time, whether life is for career or career is for life, that has to be settled first. See, if a career-centric life becomes totally peripheral, and a career should supplement life. Once we are putting it then any women cases, once they develop a they develop a definite personality, then their emotion takes the back seat, and without emotion there is no cementing of bonds. Then it is an adjustment. Then you are leaving two people who only dissecting each other all the time. So too much of brain stuff, the emotion flies through the window. So therefore, so cementing becomes less, more bickering, more ego classes, because you are definite personality. You become so cemented with your personality. There is hardly any margin for any interaction, any sort of thing. So give and take. So little bit of innocence should be there for bonding of the family, and then career can supplement that bond. But now if you go into a head stuff, what the career will give? Suppose you are the greatest ophthalmologist in the world, what difference it will make to anybody? See, even married people also becoming great ophthalmologists. So we have to take a very balanced approach to these things. Career is definitely, but family is also very important, because when you have a difficult time, the family comes to your aid. So the nursing of the family is very paramount to the existing of all this achievement. If I'm the great ophthalmologist, my son is not properly brought up, what the hell I'm doing here? Yeah, I have tons of money and people are clapping me, so I am a shallow man. So my child is there, my mirror is there. I can see my image in them. If my wife is happy, I see my image with them. So that is what we have to create an ambience around ourselves. So the career should supplement that. That will be my take. See,
Thank you, sir. Boramani, sir, are you there?
Hello.
Yes, sir.
No, I perfectly agree with what Dr. Sahu sir said. There has to be perfective balance, and we have to see what is the priority. I just want to have few comments. Namrata madam said, you complete your post-graduation at the age of 23. I don't think anyone completes nowadays post-graduation at the age of 23. Almost it is 26, 27 years. That is one thing. And ultimately, it depends upon what is your priority. You have to balance between both things. In your case, you did the fellowship in Toronto, but I think for your a ready setup was waiting for you, isn't it?
Yeah.
So we have
I
to,
think that makes a lot of
yeah,
difference.
that makes a lot of difference.
That makes a lot of difference.
Correct.
If you have to
Correct.
struggle on your own, and if
Yeah.
you have to start from a scratch versus
Correct.
you're going in a setup which is already there. I mean, that takes all the mental load off your head.
Correct.
And regarding the due respects to sir, I just would want to say that I'm not saying that you completely disconnect the two. I'm saying only defer it for some time, till the time that you also are at a position where you are settled. Because if you take too long to do it, then what happens is that you have no time to do it. I have seen in my own institution, Lady Hardy, which was an all ladies institution, I have seen 50% of the girls going just into CGHS dispensaries and ESI dispensaries, not even doing a post graduation. So I'm not saying that because of the family, which is good, because that is what their priority was at that time. But at the same time, you should not have a escapist attitude saying that, I was looking after my family, so I didn't take up a career. So sometimes they go into that escapism. I think these sentiments will be better understood by the female counterparts, if I may say so, because and if you want to do it, I mean, it's all about happiness. If you're happy doing nothing, if you're happy just sitting back, it's fine. I mean, that's your level of happiness, and you're happy about it. So I think you should do what you are happy about, and if you think that you have to do something, then I think you have to work towards it and plan accordingly. It's all about planning.
Madam Chitra Madam is here. She is laughing, and she is still watching the debate, because in the last debate I could see that she was for family. But let us hear her views now. Can you unmute, Madam, please?
I'm sure Chitra will change her views now.
No, I feel that what Namrata said makes sense today, because that's the way it is. Otherwise, the woman would get completely swallowed if she does not do it that way. Probably what Dr. Chang said also makes sense, but I somehow don't see it happening in our country, that you give it a long gap and you can get back to doing fellowship. That fellowship will just become a dream. The other thing, we'll have to be very realistic. Like, Namrata was lucky. I was terrifically lucky to have the right family to grow in spite of all that I said. It does not happen in all the families, and it is unfortunate. One of the person has to take an upper lead, one person has to do earn and get money home, and one person has to take care of the child if the family support system is not there. So I think these are good debates. This will give energy to the younger generation to do the right and the wrong and be justified, but we cannot generalize on this.
I totally agree with Chitra madam, because the purpose of the debate is to explore the issues and it's not just to end them. There's a famous quote by Joseph Joubert. He says that it is better to debate a question without settling it than to settle a question without debating it. So I think both of you did a wonderful job, madam. Thank you, Namrata madam. Thank you, Dr. Meenakshi. Thank you, Chitra madam, for chipping in up. Thank you, panelists, for giving it. It was really a wonderful debate session. So quickly, we'll move on to our next speaker, over to Dr. Jagdish Reddy. We are all very keenly waiting to hear from Dr. Chang and Dr. Boris Malajin.
Welcome, Dr. Chang. As I was introducing Dr. Chang, he has finished from his residency in medicine from some of the finest schools in the United States. He's a recipient of AO Lifetime Award and AO Humanitarian Award. In the recent years, in 2020, he received the Arvind Venkatswamy Award too. He's the editor of the iWorld magazine, which is a leading journal. And he's... It takes close to 20. Yes, sir. He's also an author of the Phaco Chop and Phaco Techniques books and a mastery in refractive IOLs. Without further ado, I would ask Dr. David Chang to get onto his topic, rescue, when and how to convert from Phaco. Welcome, Dr. Chang.
Well, thank you very much. I decided to speak about when I think we can use manual small incision, particularly in the US, and that's to rescue cases with Phaco. So this first case that I'll show is, a hyper mature cataract. But what I encounter here as I initiate the rexus is a lot of phacodenesis, movement of the lens. And this is just a rock hard lens. And so as I see how much movement is here, I have to make a decision. Is it really worth doing phaco? So I'm going to convert here with this much zonulopathy. And so let's just see what the points are. I have to create a can opener so we don't have any constraint with the CCC, even though it's fairly large. And I like to abandon my temporal clear corneal incision and move superiorly, which I've done here. You can do this under topical, but you can also supplement with a subtenons injection. And typically, we would do an extra cap at the posterior limbus after doing some cautery, taking down the conj, and then I'll extend this. And I can do bimanual expression or a lens loop at this point, because I don't actually have a zonular dialysis or a PC rupture. So by avoiding the temporal clear corneal incision, I'm going to get a cleaner incision. Here's the just simple bimanual expression. And I think that even though we'll end up with a larger incision, we don't have vitreous loss, and we specifically preserve a lot more of this patient's corneal endothelium. But with a large incision in this situation, I have to temporarily close. We've got the iris prolapse. We'll have to remove the cortex, and eventually I'll put in a three-piece PC IOL. And for many of these cases now, what we end up using is just our foldable lens and not folded. There's not much cortex here. And then here goes the lens. So, these patients presenting with such dense cataracts are, either there may be other issues with their eye. They're not really premium refractive lens patients. This, to my mind, is more preferable than having to do a vitrectomy and also the prolonged recovery of the cornea. So this next case, I actually decided to abort because I've had iris prolapse temporally. You can see I put a subincisional retractor, and as I move it, there's some zonulopathy. The pupil is coming down. It is, again, a very dense case. So if you're comfortable with manual extra cap, I think we can make a decision at this point. This is the critical time to decide. And yes, I might have been able to get away with phaco for sure. But if your posterior capsule rupture with that type of case is 1 in 20, that's a 5% posterior capsule rupture rate. And that would be considered high under normal circumstances. So for the M6, I draw the straight line, and then we have to use a beveled crescent blade to undermine. But because we're doing this early, this is not easy to do if the eye is soft. You don't do this if you've already got started phaco and you've got a zonular dialysis or a posterior capsule rupture. So you need a firm eye. But in this case, because I'm converting, I've already done the CCC, but I don't like the circumstances. You can abort, you can convert, and then your M6 in this case becomes a rescue procedure. So I think for those that aren't doing this, the key here is your internal dimension has to be larger than the external dimension. So we're undermining in a sort of lateral fashion here. We'll then want to, again, convert this to a can opener. So I'll make my opening with a keratome, but because the edges are too sharp, I'll extend with the crescent blade, so I'm careful not to create a false path or a secondary incision. And you can see here that it's angled so that the internal dimension is higher. Again, I've abandoned the temporal clear-corneal incision, which will be self-sealing and which will close on its own. In this case, I'm a little bit worried about the iris prolapse already. The pupils come down, so we're going to rock this back and forth, and then this has irrigation, so it's a little bit of a hydro expression. We pop this into the anterior chamber. You need to have an adequate sized incision. I'm going to recoat the cornea as well, and then here I'm using the lens loop. And here you want to depress on the scleral lip as this comes out, then we'll refill. And in this case, I was able to do the INA and put the lens in without partially closing the incision down because of the scleral pocket. Many of my Indian colleagues would leave this unsutured. It is superior, but in this particular case, I'm just going to put one single suture, radial suture in, and I have a closure. So I would basically think that at this point, my total time spent in the case is probably less than if I had done a phaco. But this is really all about complications. This is about how many endothelial cells will I lose, and is my posterior capsule rupture rate 1 in 20 or 1 in 50? So this is an individual decision, and it depends on your individual skill set. But even though, I think all of us on this faculty are comfortable with dense cataracts, it does make sense when you can lower the cell loss rate and the posterior capsule rupture rate. And it's, depends on the specific patient. But this is a patient that was not a refractive IOL candidate. Again, I think this is a skill set that unfortunately surgeons in the United States are lacking. In fact, the residents don't even get experience with 3-piece monofocals anymore, and they certainly have trouble getting experience with manual extra caps. So these are the key points. You can supplement if you haven't done a retrobulbar peribulbar. Move superiorly. There's no reason to use that clear corneal incision. Make sure you have an adequate sized opening of the rexus, using a can opener if you need to. You want to be familiar with using a lens loop, not just by manual compression. And of course, the incision size, has to be adequate. And then with such a large incision, I think an anterior chamber lens becomes an option with a very soft eye, large incision. Trying to do a Yamane or such technique can be more difficult. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Chang. It was really wonderful, and it gives a lot of confidence to all those youngsters that they'll not shy away from doing M6 or doing ECC. Such beautifully done. New world of FACO over there. I'm pretty sure it's a great challenge to actually do or cover M6 and cases like that. Interestingly, I observed that you used a 80 nylon suture, 80 suture in the ECC. Do you think you could not go away with a 10-0 nylon suture? That's something which is a little interesting, which probably we do over here. I would leave to the panelists to comment on it, and Dr. Sahu and Dr. Ravindra, sir, please go ahead with your comments.
See, coming from David, it is really a lot of encouragement to those who are looking at this webinar, because he's an authority on these things, an authority, a master in FACO. So if he tells something, those who are shying away will have a lesson from them. So they will be more confident to express that, yes, when the need arises, it is better to convert to SICS rather than create a problem with FACO. That will be my saying that. Thank you, David, for standing by SICS and promoting it. Thank you.
Dr. Boramani, sir, do you want to add anything onto it?
I just want to add anything. Thank you, David, sir, for excellent presentation and the importance of MSICS. Everyone should learn MSICS because it can come as a rescue procedure for a PICO surgeon. But I've been asking this question in many conferences that we see a lot of presentations when to convert to M6 during a PICO emulsification. Because there are problematic situations, then it is better to convert to MSICS, abandon the PICO procedure. Is there any situation where you are doing a planned MSICS and then you decide to convert to PICO because of some problem?
That's an interesting one. No, because you've really made that incision, and it's but I do think the point is that some cases I just know I'm going to do an M6 beforehand. It's a black cataract, whatever the reason might be. But there are other cases, I think I could go either way. So I'll start the case and I do my temporal clear corneal incision, do the capsulotomy. But you have that point before you start the phaco that you then have another chance to ask yourself, do I really want to continue? And in that first case where the lens was so mobile, it's, this is not a good idea. I was on the fence. Okay, now I'm just going to do an extra cap, in that case. So I think that having both of these procedures in your armamentarium is the key. If you're really only comfortable with phaco, you're naturally going to be biased to do that at that point. And I think the 8.0 versus the 10.0, I don't think it really matters. The idea would be, do you save time by doing 10.0 nylons? I still take one out. So the 8.0 is just a little faster to put in and close the eye quickly, but you can use both. When you do use 10.0, it is going to get stretched out. So it's going to end up being quite loose by the time you've done the INA and so forth.
Dr. Ravindra, sir, you want to add something on that?
Nothing. I think many of us have come through ICC days and ECC days. We've excelled in every step. And many of us have started phacoemulsification, then have gone into M6, looking at the advantages of M6 over any other procedure. We're all very comfortable with all the techniques. I do not know whether I can do intracapsular days, but I'm having done the numbers in those days, we can go back. But looking at the results on the cornea, the SIA, and the complications associated, as it was mentioned earlier, like posterior capsular tears and zonular dehiscences, I think M6 should be taught at all levels all over the world. And I congratulate Dr. Sahu to have taken this mantle on his broad shoulders. And I do see a day when everybody comes and says that, M6 is a good alternative to any person who is doing cataract surgery anywhere in the world. But that's my view.
Welcome, Boris.
Thank you, Dr. Ravindra, sir. Thank you, Dr. Ravindra, sir. And here I welcome the ringmaster, who is the pioneer of the pupil expansion device, the Maligan ring. He's the president of the Russian Ophthalmology Society. He's a board member of the European Society of Cataract and Refractive Surgeries. He has written extensively, has extensive literature and has co-authored a lot of books in the field of ophthalmology, and is editorial in various journals. Welcome, Dr. Boris.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here with you today. I can't hear. Is there a sound there?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, because I cannot hear that.
Yeah. We can hear you, but I think your is not working. Looks
the
like.
voiceover is not coming. Dr. Boris, you can make the commentary.
I see. So
you can talk.
Maybe then we should probably stop at that moment. And I suggest to reload it as a talk that I will present from my computer. I think it will be better like that.
Sorry, is the problem there is no voice?
Yes, Dr. Jagdish.
Yeah, sorry for that.
Otherwise, let Dr. Jagdish show the video and let Dr. Boris talk. That also is possible. Yes.
So I can.
Right now, sir. Right now.
Dear colleagues,
is it okay?
It's
sir?
my great pleasure
Yes.
to discuss with you today
Sorry for that.
different techniques that I used for patients with lens subluxations and ectopias. The main surgical goals in these patients are to preserve capsular bag for IOL fixation and to provide stable IOL position in the long term postoperative. There are several devices that can help us to stabilize the capsular bag during surgery, such as capsular hooks. There are many useful devices that can be sutured to the sclera and provide long-term capsular bag stabilization. Capsular tension rings of various types are among the most popular. They can be utilized in the variety of clinical conditions from relatively mild to very severe zonular instability. Malugin modified CTR is having an eyelet that is moved to the very tip of the device. That make it much easier to implant into the eye with the help of the injector. Over the years, my preferred suture was 9-0 polypropylene. However, quite recently, Gore-Tex was also introduced into my clinical practice. With polypropylene, having both ends of one suture attached to the same needle, forming the loop, it is quite easy to use the co-hitch type of suture attachment to the eyelet of the CTR. After exiting the eye, the suture is fixed to the sclera with zigzag technique proposed by Peter Schurman. L-shaped incision of the conjunctiva is made, and the needle is passed parallel to the limbus 4 or 5 times. Here is the clinical case of the patient having Marfan syndrome. As shown here, capsulotomy is initiated with their microforceps. Following that, the capsular bag was stabilized with the special capsular hooks introduced through the opening in the anterior capsule, as shown here. And this is a very useful device because the tip of the capsular hooks rests at the equator of the capsular bag and does not cause a lot of stress on the edge of the anterior capsular axis. Following by aspiration of the relatively soft cortical material, CTR is introduced into the capsular bag, and we can see that suture is attached to the eyelet of the CTR, and after rotation of the fixation element, into the proper position. We release the capsular hooks, we reposition the fixation element on top of the anterior capsule, as shown here, and that passes the needle through the ciliary sulcus outside of the eye, and then aspirating the residual cortical material from the capsular bag, implanting IOL in the capsular bag, and positioning it the way that the haptics of the lens are not interfering with the position of the fixation element. Certain anatomical considerations should be kept in mind when utilizing the Z suture. First, relatively wide scleral exposure is needed. And second, there is not enough space for the suture when the needle exits close to the rectus muscle. Over the years, this technique showed us the stability of the implant and the reliability of the clinical results. And you can see with the blue arrows the location of the CTR in the capsular bag and also the intrascleral path of the suture. We performed this technique with a great success. However, 2 years ago, the patient came back to us after 5 years following implantation of the CTR and suturing it to the sclera. And you can see here that the IOL is dislocated. The suture is located under the conjunctiva, and during the surgical procedure, when we inspected the area of the suture, we observed that there is a suture break that happened over these years. This patient needed refixation of the capsular bag with another suture, and this problem was resolved. We use scanning electronic microscopy to examine the suture, and we've seen a significant amount of fire degradation of this 9-0 polypropylene material, as shown here. And also, we observed the thinning of the tips of the suture directly attached to the eyelet of the CTR. Starting from the case, we finished using 9-0 polypropylene, and this is current technique, which is illustrated by this video fragment. As shown here, there was a significant lens subluxation. Now, phaco emulsification is being performed with the help of the capsular hooks that are supporting the capsular bag, and you can see here that the lens is quite stable. Now I'm injecting modified CTR inside the capsular bag, while there is some cortical material still present, with the reason being to avoid aspiration of the equator of the capsular bag, which is not uncommon in that kind of surgery. In spite of the capsular hooks that are in place, there is still a gap in between them where that issue may happen. I decided to attach the cortex to the eyelet of the CTR without doing it outside of the eye. Sometimes it's much more helpful to do it that way. For that purpose, I'm using two 25 gauge forceps. Bent 25 gauge needle will be used to introduce the suture through the ciliary sulcus and go out of the eye through the sclera. As shown here, this is one tip of that suture that is passed through the sclera, and I will be using the same needle to pass the second portion of that suture and again go out from the eye in the area adjacent to the first exit. The ends of the suture are trimmed, and it's time to implant the IOL into the capsular bag because the later is stabilized with the CTR fixed to the sclera. And this is a hydrophobic acrylic IOL that goes into the capsular bag that unfolds quite slowly in the controlled fashion. So I will be able to guide the haptic into the capsular bag, and then, which is very important step, station of the knot inside the sclera. My preferred technique in patients with significant zonular dialysis and lens subluxation is based on capsular bag stabilization with the modified CTR. I do think that Vortex is the best current option for CTR suturing, and this technique is being a viable alternative to the iris floor, scleral, or iris sutured IOLs, and even flanged IOL CTR techniques. And I thank you very much for your kind attention.
Dr. Boris, that was a wonderful talk. I would ask Dr. Srinivas sir to actually go ahead and.
Dr. Boris, I think you did not mention one thing, the disclaimer, that these procedures has to be done by Dr. Boris Malijan or by the expert's hand and not to be done by any of the youngsters or anything. You have the disclaimer when we see any films. Na? Wonderful, wonderful videos, Dr. Boris. Thank you very much for that. Actually, I'm seeing very recently about the fixation of the CTR also by Gore-Tex. Usually, as a vitreoretinal surgeons, we used to do more with the help of SFIOL using the Gore-Tex suture for that. But using the CTR and trying to place the lens on the stabilized bag with the CTR is really very interesting. Yes, Dr. Chinmay, have you tried it in aphakic patients? You are muted, please. Kindly unmute yourself.
Surgeries by Maligan sir, and personally I have no experience with Gore-Tex. I'm still using 90 or 10 polypropylene for most of my scleral fixation IOLs, and for CTR stabilization really haven't used it as yet.
Yeah, Dr. Amey?
Yeah, I've not used Gore-Tex as such, but we're using polypropylene AN90 or 10 for stabilization.
Just one question to Dr. Boris and Dr. Chang. What main difference do you see between this Gore-Tex suture and using the 9O or the 10O polypropylene? What's the main difference? Or maneuvering with the Gore-Tex is slightly easier because it's more thicker?
I think the major issue with Gore-Tex that it does not have a proper needle attached to that suture, which makes it a little bit more challenging. And because 90 polypropylene is having a very nice and long needle that can easily pass through the sclera, which is not the case with the Gore-Tex. So that's why I showed how to use the needle. Some people can use ports, vitrectomy ports, to pass the suture through the sclera. This is another option. I believe the other important thing is when you're using the Gore-Tex suturing, it's very important to rotate the knot inside the sclera, because the knot is relatively thick, and if it's left on top of the sclera, that may cause erosion in the post-operative period, which is to be avoided, of course.
Great. Dr. Chang, do you routinely use the Gore-Tex suture, or you go ahead with any other sutures of your choice? What's your favorite management aspect in case of aphaking?
Yeah, so I think Boris gave a really good summary, and I thought the scanning EM was very interesting, that one case that, where it broke years later. And that's what we don't really know how often that will happen. But just as he said, having the needle, it's just a lot easier with the 9O to pass. I think that's a really, nice technique that he showed. It is thicker. It's you have to bury the knot. It's a little harder to tie. The other option that I think is emerging is Dr. Canabrava from Brazil is, using the 4O proline and then using his flange technique. So I think that shows a lot of promise in terms of something that is long-term, where you don't have the knot to bury. I did want to, ask Boris, because I think, his ring works fantastic, particularly in these Marfan's patients. But do you have any pearls on, putting that in there while you still have the capsule retractors? Because it can get kind of, you can get caught in the retractors. And I think that's why he put in the suture later, because when you have that ring has to circle the circumference and you have a suture, it can get tangled up with the retractors. But any pearls, Boris, on, because I think putting it in early is obviously very helpful. Like you said, it prevents the rest of the capsular rim from being aspirated in between the capsule retractors.
I tried different retractors, and I think David modified capsular retractors to make them less prone for tackling with the CTR that goes into the capsular bag. And I think this Chang modification is very, very nice, and I love to use it. And also, of course, you have to be quite careful, and passing the suture later than earlier is also helpful, because sometimes the suture may stuck somewhere outside of the eye, and then you struggle with that. So there are pros and cons of every technique, but I think using proper instruments and proper suturing material is very important.
I think you're muted.
Sorry, Dr. Nito, I'd like to hear from you. What's your preferred technique of choice in case of phakics? What would be your polypropylene, or you prefer Gore-Tex? And any experience, I would like to know, does the panelists or speakers still do AC IOLs?
Oh, as I work in the public health system in Brazil, I have some difficulty most of the times getting Gore-Tex. So I mostly use 90 Prolene. But what I would like to point out that Dr. Malyugin excellently talked about is the advantage of keeping the capsular bag. I think in every situation where you have zonular compromise, it should be in the surgeon, if he or she can finish the surgery and put the IOL inside the bag and keep the bag, it's much better than any other kind of IOL fixation, because you will not have issues with iris chafing. You have a much more easier centering. So I think this is important. The surgeon to consider, is it possible to retain the bag and put the IOL in the bag? I think this is an important message that Dr. Malyugin passed for us.
Wonderful. I totally second you, Dr. Nito. Definitely. And it's more traumatic to do the secondary fixated IOLs now, and as you said, definitely iris chafing. And in fact, if you have any retinal procedures, we do see the gas bubble or the oil bubble also coming into the AC when we do with the still fixated or with the AC IOLs or the retrofixated IOLs. Last question to all the panelists here. Do we still do AC IOLs in US or in Russia or in Brazil?
Well, AC IOLs, if you look at polls, are still the most common method for IOL fixation in the United States with an absent or impaired posterior capsule. And that's really because people are comfortable with that. And I think they're just different situations. I think everyone has the potential situation where the capsule ruptures, you have partially descending lens fragments, you enlarge the incision, you're just trying to rescue the case. You already have a big incision, you've got a vitrectomized soft eye, And if you have, the right size for the ACIOL, I think it makes perfect sense to do that in that case. Then you have others where it's an IOL exchange or a secondary IOL for aphakia, and you have the chance to plan. And there you have the advantage of a smaller incision, and you can put in a chamber maintainer and have everything set up to do a flange technique or something like that. So there's so many different situations and there's different skill sets, but the all of the literature and the most recent update, there was a AAO committee that looked at this and published in 2003, and then there was a new update in 2020 last year. And it again showed that when you look at scleral or iris suture fixation of posterior chamber lenses versus ACIOL, this is mostly American data, there really was no superior technique in terms of outcomes, whether you look at complications or visual acuity. So it at least gives some support for those that are most comfortable with an ACIOL to continue doing that. It obviously has to be correctly sized.
Quick comments, Dr. Boris?
As for Russia, historically, ACIOLs were not very popular in Russia for over these years. So again, historically, we, as a legacy of Professor Fyodorov, we used pupil fixated lenses, and we still using them in these complicated cases. So that's why, so for me is either scleral fixation, iris suturing, or pupil fixated lenses. And now we have modified pupil fixated that are made from soft material and goes in through the injector. So it's kind of, this historical trend that we continue.
Thank you. And Dr. Chinmay, you wanted to add something?
I just wanted to second what Dr. Chang said. Like if you are planning an ACIOL and if a vitrectomy is well done, pupil is circular, and you've ensured a peripheral iridectomy is performed and correctly positioned, an ACIOL can be a good option even in our setup in India, where in high volume centers, at times you have unanticipated complications and where can easily maintain a stock of the ACIOLs. But in an elective case where you're probably planning a secondary IOL between a retrofixated posterior iris claw versus a scleral fixated, I think one of the two would become a choice of lens.
Last comments, Dr. Steve?
I use ACIOLs really only in one group, and that's now we have sort of an epidemic of people that are 85 years old and over that have pseudoexfoliation, who come in having had cataract surgery 20 years ago, and the complete IOL and bag complex dislocates. In some of them, you can fixate it with a suture and stabilize it, but in some, the entire bag is just not attached. And that is a often more complicated procedure to do in someone who's 85 or 88 years old and not very healthy. And taking out the whole lens bag complex is very easy, and replace it with an anterior chamber lens, and they do perfectly fine. So it's a unique group in whom I prefer anterior chamber lenses.
Thank you very much. And Dr. Sahu sir and Boramani sir, to conclude the last comments.
I think progressively we are shifting to retrofixation of iris claw lenses. I used to keep AC IOL as standby lenses, but nowadays I'm keeping iris claw lenses as standby because, in my opinion, retrofixation of iris claw lenses is quite quick procedure, less traumatizing, and the cornea saving procedure.
Sahu sir, unmute please. Unmute yourself, sir.
Retrofixation of iris claw lenses or ACIOL is, I'm comfortable with them. And sometimes my son also does this scleral fixation IOL and all these things. I think it depends upon the case to case basis. You can't have a dogmatic approach to anything.
Jagdish, can we conclude?
Yeah,
sure. Say something?
Yeah, thank you everyone. It's a wonderful session, everyone, and I really thank all the international speakers for these odd times coming down over here. Thank Dr. Dr. Boris, Dr. Steve, Dr. Chang, and Dr. Nito for those wonderful talks, and all the panelists who are here, Dr. Pamela, Dr. Deepak, Dr. Chinmaya, Dr. Kudlusa, Dr. Satyajit. And we had a wonderful session with a nice debate with Dr. Partha Biswas, Dr. Chitra Ramamurthy, and it was whether to start back our practice webinars during this Corona season. Dr. Santosh Navar and Dr. Rohit Shetty, and especially the costing procedures by Dr. Ameya and Dr. Ravindra sir, and whether we opt for a bilateral cataract surgery or not by Dr. Cyrus and Dr. Krishna Prasad, and versus charity versus premium surgeries between Kaushik and Dr. Gaurav, and what to do after post-graduation. Two great speakers out over there, Dr. Namrata and Dr. Meenakshi. It was great having all you guys, and it definitely it's all happened with the perfect ISMSCS committee, Dr. Amulya Sahu, Dr. Boramani sir, Dr. Bhattacharya, Dr. Parikshit sir, Dr. Satanshu Mathur, and the person who is right now the moderator, Dr. Srinivas Joshi. And nevertheless, it's all because of some back-end team at the end. And thank you, and Todd, for actually helping us out in this. It was really helpful to carry out these seminars. Thank you, everyone, and have a great day for all out there.
Thank you. Thank you, Team Entourd, led by Nikhil Masurkar, Raman Marke, and Rohit Singh, and also my co-moderator, Dr. Jagdish Reddy, who has nicely co-moderated with me. Thanks you, Dr. Jagdish, and entire ISM SICS team led by Dr. Sahu sir, Dr. Boramani. Boramani sir, quickly, you want to say something?
No. Can I make one announcement again, because this is for the audience? I want to just show one slide.
Please, sir. Please.
Because ISM SICS is starting a global SICS training program, which is online. You can see my slide. No?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So this is mainly for the audience. We are starting the global SICS training program. Those who are interested amongst the audience as teachers or experts and they want to participate in the teaching program can register via this link. They have to fill up a form, or you can just take a screenshot of this slide. You can scan the QR code for the link, or you can take a screenshot and fill up the form. We are already received a lot of response, but we still want to include more and more teachers in this program. Thanks.
So thank you, sir. And I also would like to thank Mr. Sunil from Zadiotech and Mr. Sai Krishnan from Numerotech for technically also helping us along with the team Entourd, led by the young dynamic, none other than Mr. Nikhil Masurkar, Raman Marke, Rohit, and the entire team of Entourd. Thank you very much, and thank all the international speakers for adding more and more colors, adding more and more feathers to the cap. And that's why this program is considered as one of the most successful debates we ever had in the first part of Jan 2021.
Thank you, David and Nato, and everybody there. And Melugin, somehow or other he made it. He said that he may not come, but he came. That is one thing. And Steve has been there from the beginning. So thank you, all of you. Pamela, get well.
Steve, actually, Dr. Sahu, I think Steve is the host and we are the guests here. He has been right from the beginning and till the end. Hats off, Dr. Steve. You have been constantly there. And thanks, Dr. David Chang, also joining in early. And also, not to forget, Dr. Nito, who is also, he joined in fact, before me as the host. So thank you, Dr. Nito, as well. Thank you, entire team, for this, for your excellent cooperation.
The host. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks for inviting me.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, everyone.
Good night.
Nice to see you all.
Good night.
Thank you.
Good night.